One, the master was drilling his young students. Everyone had to lock into a painful horse stance. 2 long hours. Looking around, Mujin realized something was dead wrong. Basic anatomy, these poor kids were on a fast track to ruin. Specifically, their knees and spines, but the master was totally confident in his old ways. So Mujin yelled out, calling everyone a bunch of ignorant fools who knew absolutely nothing. They lacked basic knowledge. The master and sect leaders froze in absolute shock. Even the other students gasped. The furious master pointed a trembling finger right at Mujin. He barked, asking if Mujin lost his mind along with his hair. The elders immediately accused him of just whining because the physical training was far too difficult for him. Mujin refused to back down. He insisted their entire training routine was wrong. The master was furious. A kid was calling their ancient Shaolin training flawed. Mujin explained that this stance actually destroys knees faster than building real muscle. But of course, the traditional master knew absolutely nothing about sports science or joint health. He had no clue what cartilage even was, so he accused the boy of lying. He claimed Mujin was just fabricating excuses because his weak little body could not handle it. Mujin fired right back, asking if martial arts were meant to strengthen both body and spirit. If weak people cannot do this, he argued, then your entire system is a contradiction. The master fell silent, so Mujin pushed further, if training is meant to make youth suffer, to harden their minds for hardships, then all the elders who suffered should have achieved full enlightenment by now, right? His logic immediately planted seeds of deep doubt in the minds of the young monks. Then Mujin pointed, straight at a first-class disciple. He boldly questioned him. Why had that old man not achieved enlightenment yet? The elder roared in pure fury. For the very first time, Mujin felt a chilling wave of danger, actual danger. The elder stepped forward with a deal. If Mujin was so incredibly confident, prove it. He must defeat the other students without ever doing their traditional style of training. His opponent would be the top student in class, a massive, incredibly strong, chubby kid. The powerhouse kid stood right up, eagerly accepting the match, but Mujin knew this was unfair. Their actual weight classes were completely different, making it an insanely lopsided duel. The elder wanted Mujin to beg for mercy and back down, but that did not happen. Instead, Mujin accepted the fight with absolute confidence. The elder struggled to hide his boiling rage. This kid was far too stubborn to break, which posed a serious threat to his authority. The old man turned. Back to work, he roared. Mujin was allowed to train his own way until the fight. Later, a friend approached him, saying he was incredibly brave, but completely insane to invent those bizarre rumors about knees. Their main master forced everyone back to work. Still, the senior elder remained absolutely furious. He had never been publicly humiliated like that, and just look at the students' reactions. Their blind confidence in these ancient training methods had been completely shaken up. The countdown was on 7 days. Mujin started his own bizarre workout routine. Several senior students tried to intimidate him for doing things so differently. But the master was nearby and firmly reminded everyone that Mujin was fully permitted. Our guy also took the opportunity to warn the other students about their throbbing knees. He pointed out they must be in agonizing pain. What none of them knew was that Mujin was no ordinary kid. In his previous life, Mujin lived in the modern world as a gym owner. His entire career was building muscle and motivation. Helping students sculpt their bodies naturally, people built stunning physiques under his coaching. The guy loved a web novel called Murmur Manas, but one night he fell asleep. Mid-chapter, or maybe he actually died. Either way, he woke up reincarnated. As a weak kid named Mujin, that 200-pound trainer was now a scrawny, bald Shaolin monk. Strangely, his mind held all the protagonist's memories of the novel. On day one of watching these baldies train, he broke. There was simply no holding back. He questioned their entire routine. Now he has to prove to the masters that there is a proper way to train. Meanwhile, the other disciples are literally shivering with pure exhaustion. But Mujin can push himself way further without feeling any real pain. After 2 hours of training, Gang is starving when Muyil calls them for lunch. Mujin looks down at his bowl and honestly wonders if this is actually all they get. At the long table, the master gives the signal to eat, but Mujin hesitates. He remembers temple food is strictly vegetarian. Where is the protein? Suddenly, he realizes how incredibly vivid and realistic the food smells for a dream. It smells decent, but it is just a bunch of vegetables, basically grass to him. Slapping the table, Mujin yells that this is complete abuse. A master demands who dares disturb mealtime, but Mujin just screams back. He asks if they really expect them to survive on this. Mugong stands up. Demanding to know what he is doing, that kid has caused trouble since dawn. Stepping closer, Mugong warns that enough is enough, he needs a lesson. But Mujin snaps back that a body needs protein, and he will not tolerate this. Suddenly, a calm voice interrupts them, making both Mujin and Mugong look over. It is the head chef, Hyan Moon, who claims he was just passing by. He gently notes that the poor young disciple must be incredibly hungry. Offering him extra rice, the chef gets shut down. Mujin has enough. The chef asks if he wants more side dishes, assuming the child is starving. Mujin asks if they have protein supplements or chicken breasts. The chef and the other monks just stare at him in complete disbelief. They watch him closely, silently wondering what on earth is wrong with this kid. Muyil steps up, whispering that he has been acting incredibly strange all morning. He asks if he is okay, but Mujin just screams that he needs protein. Muscle gains are vital, but deep down, he wonders what is actually going on. The training feels real, the food smells real. Why has he not woken up? If this is just a dream, why is everything so incredibly vivid? Realizing this might actually be real life, he decides to watch his step. As a disciple in the Shaolin temple, he has to guard his tongue. Bowing, he apologizes, claiming he was too hungry to think straight. The head chef agrees, noting that training must have completely exhausted him. Seizing the moment, Mujin asks if he can at least have some beans. The chef just stares in absolute silence. Dream or not, he needs his gains. This endless cycle of training, bland meals, and boring scripture studies quickly begins to weigh heavily on his active soul. Finally accepting that he is trapped inside a novel, he wonders how to go home. Then it hits him, maybe he can leave once the story wraps up. Ends a legendary martial arts school means he must have insane talent. But spilling ink all over his book creates a brand new mess. Looking up, he realizes he is completely surrounded by monks. Mistake, he has drawn way too much unwanted attention to himself. Dead silence, everyone in the room keeps their eyes locked on him. Well, he is already here, no use running away now. Master Haizhong questions the head chef, asking if it is true. The chef confirms the boy is strange, prompting Hyan Moon to ask what happens. Master Haizhong explains he gave him a week to challenge Mugong. Hyan Moon praises this solution as a very wise move. It easily avoids criticism. Still, he deeply doubts the choice to face Mugong. Each year, the Shaolin Temple invites hundreds of children to join. Most cannot endure the brutal training and give up early. Only a tiny fraction are officially accepted as true disciples. Because of this, senior monks rarely bother to learn a child's name. Yet Mugong is one of the elite few who stands out. Master Haizhong believes Mugong is perfect to teach him a lesson. Time's up, true to his word, Master Haizhong steps forward. He asks if they are ready, while Muyil turns to Mujin. Wondering what he is doing, Mujin explains these are warm-up stretches. To make it sound epic, he calls it the forelimb extension technique. Stretching prepares the muscles and relaxes the tight ligaments. Countless exercises exist, all designed to prime the body. They boost flexibility, prompting Mujin to invite Muyil to join. He says it is a great habit, as the other disciples watch. They whisper among themselves, utterly baffled by those incredibly weird poses. Mule catches on quickly, earning instant praise from Mujin. Suddenly, a monk points at Mugong, asking if those are chain fist strikes. No mercy, Mugong throws a blinding punch straight into the air. The crowd gasps, whispering that they can hear the wind crackling. Watching this, Mujin realizes exactly what he is up against. One hit and he is completely finished. How can he win in a week? He racks his brain, searching for any way to survive. Then, out of nowhere, a crazy plan flashes inside his mind. Now he knows exactly what to do as the master watches. Master Haizhong remembers Mujin claiming he was not making lazy excuses. While he disobeys orders, he definitely has his own training methods. Mujin claimed he was preparing to beat Mugong in a single move. Yet the master still wonders why the boy keeps rubbing a tree. Either way, he believes Mugong will crush his arrogant attitude. Feeling the gaze, Mugong notices Master Haizhong watching directly. He mutters that this insolent brat will be his stepping stone. Staring back, Mujin remains completely calm as he stretches his spine. With a casual gesture, he asks Master Haizhong to begin. His pure arrogance grates on everyone as Mugong takes a tense step forward. Mugong steps forward, declaring he will show him. Mujin waits. Exuding total confidence, Mugong shows off his stance. He spent years perfecting his chain fist. Then, the master shouts to begin. Instantly, Mujin charges straight ahead, catching Mugong completely off guard. He completely panics. This attack is just too fast. The master and the other monks gasp in shock at Mujin's incredible speed. Easily dodging the chain fist, Mujin grabs Mugong, careful not to use deadly force. He cannot use lethal moves on a child. Since real combat training can easily kill, he needs a much safer alternative. A simple ground tackle, any child can survive that. Without hesitating, Mujin tackles him, slamming Mugong hard onto the ground. As Mugong groans from the impact, Mujin instantly locks his arm in place. The other monks panic. They have absolutely no clue. They stare in complete disbelief, unable to accept what is happening before them. Honestly, watching their top prodigy get utterly dismantled is a massive wake-up call. Flat on the ground, Mugong has no clue what happened. Some monks desperately shout for him to roll over and use his legs to escape. But it is too late because their martial instincts tell them he is trapped. They don't know the name, they just know it hurts. Mujin warns him that his arm will break if he keeps struggling, so just yield. The other monks scream for Mugong to stand up, reminding him Mujin has no training. Mujin asks if he can feel his bone about to pop right out of place. This kind of damage is permanent, Mujin warns, urging him to yield or break free. They keep chanting, his name rings out in desperation. Realizing the fight is over, Mujin lets him go and steps back. He offers a quick apology, while a stunned monk turns to Master Haizhong. A monk turns to Haizhong. What do they do? Mujin remarks that this is what happens when you force him to fight a child. Ancient scriptures detail the true fundamentals of the legendary chain fist technique. As a form of the 8 extremes fist, it uses devastating close attacks. Heavy elbows and shoulders, it is meant to crush opponents quickly. It thrives in close combat, and Mugong was the absolute master of this style. Even the older disciples praised his incredible talent with the chain fist. But today, his famous style is rendered completely useless. Talk about an absolute reality check for the Academy's golden boy. Sitting on the ground, Mugong complains that it was just a cheap shot. Mujin asks what he means. Mugong accuses him immediately. He whines about the weird move Mujin used to take him down. He shouts that in a real fight he would have won, while Mujin comforts him. Walking away, Mugong snaps that his name is Mugong, not Mugi. Watching closely, the monks grumble that sparring requires proper Shaolin techniques. They demand answers. Why didn't he use chain fist? Mujin explains that using the chain fist would have caused a reckless brawl. Trading heavy blows like that would have ended with both of them severely injured. He won cleanly, no injuries, no blood, just victory. They insist that is not how it works, only Shaolin techniques are allowed. Unable to accept this, they refuse to see their prized chain fist defeated so easily. By some untrained boy using unknown techniques, but one of them accepts reality. He recognizes that Mugong lost fairly, questioning if they are just being irrational. Still, he fears that if this continues, doubts will surround Shaolin martial arts. In the worst-case scenario, they might lose all their disciples, with heavy hearts. They turn to Master Hyejong, asking what they should do, but then, seeing him smile, they wonder what he is thinking. Master Hyejong calls Mujin forward. The boy approaches, and the master asks if the rumors are true. Did Mujin really use that strange technique to subdue Mugong without any injuries? Mujin confirms it. Smiling, Hyejong declares this is truly within the Shaolin spirit. He officially announces Mujin as the winner. Naturally, the other monks are shocked. They look on in surprise. Even Mujin wonders why the master is so lenient. But Hyejong explains that the child's technique only worked because of one thing. His opponent, Mugong, relies entirely on brute force rather than skill. To prove his point, the master decides to demonstrate true Shaolin martial arts. He prepares to show them the real power meant to destroy evil. Two monks quickly clear space, dragging an enormous boulder into the courtyard. Mujin watches in awe, wondering if the master will shatter it barehanded. Planting his feet firmly, Hyejong tells everyone to watch closely. This is the ultimate level of strength they are all training to achieve. He places his palm against the heavy stone, preparing his strike. With a thunderous shout, he unleashes the devastating force of the chain fist. The massive boulder instantly shatters into dozens of pieces. Imagine seeing that raw power up close. The novices whisper in complete awe. Now they see why he is the master. Mujin smiles, completely mesmerized. This is true martial arts, capable of shattering a mountain in an instant. It goes far beyond normal limits, striking down hundreds of enemies with one sweep. A single swing of a sword, or a punch that makes an enemy explode. But a monk interrupts, asking Hyejong if their ultimate goal is not defense. The master turns and confirms that defense is indeed their primary goal. Pointing at the shattered rock, Mujin gestures and asks why they defend so violently. Pausing slightly, the master admits they do not need that much force. Later that morning, things quiet down. Hyejong discusses the matter with Grandmaster Hyunsung. The Grandmaster asks if the young boy really overpowered Mugong so quickly. Hyejong confirms it, leading the Grandmaster to realize this is no ordinary child. Although Mujin complains about morning training, he secretly practices harder than anyone. In fact, he trains the chain fist more than all other novices. The Grandmaster wonders if the boy is studying the technique to exploit its flaws. Hyejong agrees, confirming his suspicions about the young novice. Hyunsung ponders this, raising a darker possibility about his origins. Could the boy be a spy from the sinister faction or the demonic cult? This shocking suspicion leaves Hyejong speechless. Meanwhile, Mujin struggles with his scriptures. The young boy is annoyed by the texts, unaware of their growing doubts. Hyejong keeps wondering if he is a spy, but Hyunsung has his doubts. After all, a real spy would never draw this much attention unless their goal was to interfere. He says there is nothing to worry about. The boy is still just a novice. Time will tell if he is actually a spy or just a strange child. Suddenly, a brand new theory crosses his mind now. What if the kid actually comes from some prestigious martial arts clan? There is no way Mujin invented those mysterious techniques entirely alone. Perhaps he is simply using his own family's hidden techniques, rejecting Shaolin's 1,000 years of teachings out of respect for his father. All of this just to prove his family's style is superior. Defeating Mugong would only make him more stubborn. That could make things messy. Heian proposes a solution. She suggests they ask for Bayup Gang's help. This immediately surprises Hei Zhang. He wonders if Bayup Gang is already part of the discipline hall. The master says Bayup Gang still feels connected to Arhat Hall. His direct involvement in this situation changes the entire game. Elsewhere, 3 young monks decide to wrap up their training and head inside. But then one of them stops and suggests another path. This leaves the others completely confused by his sudden warning. They all peek out, half expecting to see a ghost in the courtyard. Instead, they spot a man training. Why is he still out there? One of them instantly recognizes him as the Inquisitor, Brother Bayup Gang. The other monks are baffled and do not understand. The guy who usually trains late at night is holding a horse stance right now. One kid guesses he is trying to pressure them into working harder. Another monk quickly chimes in, nodding in agreement with him. Bayup Gang has always been intense, so calling him the Inquisitor makes total sense. Laughing, one of them calls Bayup Gang the wild attack dog of discipline. He found his spot, but another monk quickly corrects him. He reveals that Brother Bayup Gang will be back at Arhat Hall tomorrow. The others are absolutely stunned by this shocking news. They fully expected him to join the discipline hall by next term. After all, Bayup Gang holds an incredibly high rank among them. He set notoriously strict standards for the entire 3rd generation of disciples. Rumor says he visited every hall to deeply understand the monastery's laws. He is a man of action who always leads by example. He never asks anyone to do what he would not do himself. Ever since basic training, he pushed his limits, completely wrecking his knees. Now, overcoming that constant, agonizing pain takes immense inner strength. Yet to him, training is a sacred duty, and pain is expected. Finally, after 30 minutes of holding that brutal horse stance, he stands up. He demands to know where the child named Mujin is. He visualizes the famous troublemaker and rising star of Arhat Hall. The next day, the young novices look ahead, completely stunned by the sight. Standing right before them is none other than Brother Bayup Gang himself. He steps forward to announce his presence, leaving everyone wondering what happens next. He announces his official transfer. From now on, they are back under his command. One novice chuckles. Bayup Gang instantly snaps, telling them to get used to the idea. Watching him, Mujin notices it immediately. This guy is a hardcore military type. The other monks whisper anxiously among themselves. Why is he back? Mujin silently observes. Confusion quickly washes over the rest of the novices. They do not understand Bayup Gang's sudden presence, but amidst the chaos, Mujin quickly gets it. He reads this chaotic situation perfectly. This new instructor must have been the brutal sergeant of his generation. Morning training begins. Mujin figures it is not his problem, but suddenly, Bayup Gang orders everyone into a horse stance, patrolling the ranks. He barks that before correcting someone, you must first understand their basics. To strike with precision, you have to dissect their stance. With that, the brutal instructor begins inspecting their form. He stops in front of Mujin, checking the kid's wide stance. The back is straight, with toes locked pointing straight forward. Bayup Gang snaps, demanding to know what the boy is doing. To him, these breathing movements look more like some graceful dance. But he quickly realizes the intense physical strain perfectly matches a horse stance. He concludes it is just a clever excuse. Mujin stands up as Bayup Gang barks that his posture is wrong. Bayup Gang demands to know exactly how it is wrong. Seeing his chance, Mujin realizes he needs to correct this veteran from top to bottom. Bayup Gang copies the stance, and Mujin hears his knees creak loudly. Hearing that awful sound, he knows he cannot just ignore it. The man's worn-out joints are practically screaming for some serious help. If this brutal veteran is the drill sergeant, winning him over would give Mujin a massive advantage. Smiling, he hears Bayup Gang demand answers again. Mujin explains that training with bad knees is totally counterproductive, asking if he can demonstrate a far better alternative. With that, he drops to the floor to show a stretch. Mujin praises his flexibility, while the other disciples watch in confusion. He calls this unique movement the four-limb extension technique. He explains that this position allows the knee muscles to relax. Warming up this way makes physical movements much smoother during their daily training while easing pressure. Baebgang agrees, already feeling the massive difference. Mujin instructs him to hold it for 30 seconds per set, repeating this movement 3 times in total. After the first set is done, Mujin notices that Baebgang is still on the ground. He approaches and starts massaging the veteran's leg, asking if he feels better. Even light pressure makes the instructor flinch. Decades of extreme training have clearly left his knees in ruins. But as the massage continues, Baebgang senses an incredible shift. At first, the touch felt like an assault, but now the sharp pain melts away, replaced by an incredibly soothing sensation. Mujin then warns they have only completed 2 sets, meaning they still have 1 more. He asks must they do this right now, pushing him forward. The young trainer insists that correct training absolutely waits for no one. Looking back, Baebgang wonders who this absolute brat is. Watching, Master Haijong and his disciples also watch, deeply questioning what on earth Baebgang is actually doing. Mujin explains that this is proper exercise. It helps bad knees, known as the Inquisitor. He was an absolute, hard-headed fanatic due to his obsession with rules. Under his watch, the other second-generation disciples never had a single moment of rest, knowing his absolute and legendary fanatical devotion all too well. So they are baffled. Why are Baebgang and the novice together doing these bizarre movements? Mid-workout, Mujin suddenly suggests they take a break, then 15 more reps. Questioning him, the young boy asks why he lets his knees drop into a deep, full squat position when he instructed him not to. Due to his bad knees, explaining, Mujin says to do a slight bend instead. It relieves pressure. He reviews everything Baebgang needs to perform, and Baebgang gladly agrees. First, he instructs him to bend his knees, lowering his body slowly. Second, the entire movement should be controlled with the hips and glute muscles, not with the knees. And third, he guides him to use those exact muscles to rise. After the workout, Mujin asks how he feels, and Baebgang replies that he is doing fine. So they take a quick breather. Seriously, watch how his attitude completely flips. He felt less pain this time. Mujin announces that since they finished 3 sets, they can move on to the calves. Remembering his past life, he recalls that tough military-type clients showed up constantly. He also remembers that the tougher they seemed, the easier they were to praise, complimenting him. Mujin says he is an incredibly fast learner. Baebgang laughs, stating that he has been a Shaolin disciple for 18 years. In shock, the other monks wonder what happened. Why is the legendary wild dog so docile? Watching this, Master Haijong feels his blood pressure spike to dangerous levels and begs Buddha for strength. Nursing a massive headache, he decides to ignore them as the bell finally signals the end of practice and breakfast time. Mujin advises him to use this specific routine whenever he trains his lower body, making sure to do so before any workout. Won over completely, Baebgang accepts everything Mujin taught, though he keeps his guard up. After trying physiotherapy, stretching, and deep massage, the monk concludes that these simple techniques are absolutely incredible. Feeling almost no pain, he notices in his worked muscles how effective this session was. Realizing those training methods are undeniably effective, so Baebgang asks if he learned all these secrets from his family. Finding them incredible, he assumes the boy must come from a powerful clan. Seeing right through his thoughts, Mujin realizes they believe his family secret. Grinning, he decides this is the perfect cover story for all his Modern unusual habits so far. Smiling, the clever young trainer confirms that these methods are indeed family secrets, making Gang laugh and praise them as magnificent. Smiling, Gang clarifies he was only speaking about their sheer power. Shaolin's legendary healing techniques are unmatched, and in martial arts nothing surpasses their deep history. Meeting up with Mujin says he will remember Gang's wise words. Turning to the elders, he says he is finished and asks for permission to leave. Once dismissed, Mujin walks over and tells Mual he should have gone ahead, but his friend replies that he wanted to wait. For him, suddenly, Gang is startled to find Master Haizhong standing right behind him. He immediately apologizes to Master Haizhong for how bad things look, and Haizhong nods, acknowledging the awkward situation, laughing it off. Gang explains that he only wanted to test the kids' training to understand their enemy, and the master asks how it went. As the boys walk away, Gang starts to explain what he was actually able to observe about young Mujin. He reveals that the boy does not seem to come from a martial arts clan, but a medical family instead. Intrigued, Haizhong asks what led him to that conclusion, and Gang prepares to explain his reasoning. First, he admits that his knees are completely worn down from years of intense training, prompting the master to ask why he hid it. Gang explains he did not want to worry the elders, and more importantly, he could not show any signs of weakness to his junior disciples. None of his martial brothers ever noticed his injury, but that kid saw it immediately and warned him that continuing like this would only ruin his joints. He concludes that all those strange movements he practiced with Mujin were actually physical therapy to save his knees, a pretty clever move, honestly. Haizhong wonders if the boy is from a legendary medical clan that treats elite warriors, but he quickly dismisses the thought, sighing that it is a shame the kid rejects traditional Shaolin training. Nodding, Gang notes that kids only listen to people they feel close with, so instead of forcing him, he plans to become his friend and gently guide him back to the righteous path. Haizhong agrees with the plan. The master agrees, saying there is no rush. Meanwhile, Mujin complains about studying Buddhist scriptures right after breakfast, as Mual points out how miserable he looks. Soon, their instructor announces that since they have all mastered the basic forms of the Chainlink Fist, they are ready to take the next big step in their training. He explains that real martial arts power only comes when inner and outer strength are perfectly aligned, so they will now begin training their internal Kai. The teacher calls two senior disciples forward to demonstrate the proper posture, instructing the novices to follow their lead and sit in the lotus position. However, Mujin has no idea what that is until he watches a nearby disciple sit down, quickly recognizing the classic meditation pose. The master instructs everyone to close their eyes and focus entirely on their breathing. He tells them to inhale deeply through their nose, pulling the crisp air inside and keeping that breath steady until they feel energy pooling near their lower belly. Excited, Mujin feels he is finally learning the legendary martial arts he always dreamed of. Sitting up, done with the boring, repetitive, and harmful physical workouts, he prepares for the real training to begin. After weeks of grueling physical labor, the young novices are filled with pure excitement to learn legendary techniques, wondering to themselves if they can eventually learn to shatter massive boulders with their bare hands, just like Master Haizhong. Here in the legendary Shaolin, everyone focuses on the master's voice. Breathing in, breathing out, but Mujin feels something is wrong. This training feels entirely wrong, and he cannot shake the feeling. Sure, it is only breathing, but this is not what he expected. He expected the epic cultivation described in martial novels. Where are the teachings about yin-yang and the 5 elements? But they must have a reason. Grumbling about the brutal routine, he decides to just push through and do exactly as he is told. Honestly, who wouldn't be excited? This is inner strength training, and he is pumped. With this transcendent power, he could split mountains or fly Legendary techniques from Muram novels are taught right here in Shaolin. And he is finally about to master them. Suddenly, the master calls for attention. Everyone opens their eyes as the master starts explaining the technique. This deep breathing is actually a meditation to sense and gather Kai, which is absolutely essential to build any real inner power. He advises them to practice constantly to feel the energy flowing. Mujin realizes this is just the basics, not combat techniques yet. Only basic breathing. Still, he understands the slow process. He must feel the Kai first before cultivating real inner strength. Then veteran disciples begin distributing materials to the class. They hand out pamphlets showing detailed diagrams of body meridians. And one reaches Mujin. Master Hyajung explains they do not need to memorize everything, but mastering the main channels is vital for Kai. Since these are the paths where Kai flows in the body, they are absolutely essential for martial arts. The master calls someone forward. He begins pointing out the pathways. Mujin is highly determined, flipping through his pages to memorize every single meridian today. This is his first real step on the Buddhist path of emptiness. Mastering the pathways and gathering Kai is now his top priority. He wonders if simply memorizing all of this is actually enough. But then he spots his senior brother Byupgang training and asks him what he is doing. Laughing, Byupgang explains the workouts healed his knee. Now he is pushing himself harder. Mujin literally covers his ears, saying he can hear his cartilage grinding, and yeah, that is as painful as it sounds. To help his knee heal, but Byupgang retorts that the strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire, flexing 18 years of hard-earned muscle. Mujin quickly disagrees, warning him that if the fire gets too hot, the steel melts and human bodies are no different. He apologizes, asking Byupgang to sit down, calmly announcing he is about to manipulate his Kai. He warns him it might hurt a bit as he begins pressing. Feeling those worn-out joints, he tells Byupgang to speak up if it hurts. This exact sensation immediately reminds him of his past in the Special Forces. Every step back then required relentless, agonizing effort, despite his injuries. He kept training non-stop until he completely destroyed his own body. Yet all that brutal sacrifice did not let him stay in service. In the end, he was discharged and broken. That was the absolute lowest point of his life. He watched the rain fall, thinking that is exactly how he looked back then. As Mujin massages him, the boy warns him to rest up. After all, if his body completely breaks down, nobody else will help. Byupgang cuts in, making the boy wonder if he is just sounding too preachy. He knows nothing of Mujin's past, but Shaolin has his back. Smiling, Byupgang promises that they never abandon a single disciple, no matter what. Mujin offers a tiny smile, remaining completely quiet in response to those words. Byupgang apologizes for taking up his afternoon and asks where he is heading. The boy replies that he is off to practice their new technique. The monk wonders if he is not trained enough at home as a doctor's son. He should understand the flow of Kai, leaving Mujin fumbling for an answer. He stammers that things came up, so he never actually learned about Kai. Byupgang makes a quick suggestion: they should start practicing right now. He points, saying that watching an expert might help Mujin find his Kai faster. Sitting down, Mujin quietly admits he has absolutely no clue how to feel his own energy. Still, he is confident that watching closely will teach him something valuable. Positioning himself, the boy declares he is ready to give it a shot. Kneeling down, Byupgang tells him to focus and see what he can learn. He starts breathing deeply, while Mujin keeps a very close eye on him. As the meditation deepens, the boy senses the surrounding air shifting somehow. Watch closely now, this is his big chance to spot the difference. Suddenly, he spots a subtle detail he never noticed while training all alone. He wonders to himself if this is what everyone has been talking about. Staring at Byupgang, Mujin silently questions if this is actually the Kai. Sitting down, Mujin mimics the pattern, drawing pure Kai from nature itself. He guides the energy directly down toward his lower core energy center. Tuning his posture and visualization, he slowly begins gathering the warm Kai. Finally, a real flow of energy sparks inside, and he opens his eyes. He actually did it, but a strange detail still puzzles him quite a bit. Why on earth is his gathered Kai only the size of a single grain of rice? Still, a win is a win, and he celebrates this tiny personal victory. Byupgang senses the change, realizing the boy has already connected with his Kai. It proves Master Hijjong and the director were totally right about him. Mujin keeps practicing, but a weird cold sensation makes him snap one eye open. Coming out of his trance, he sees Byupgang standing right in front of him. He is completely shocked to find out that night has already fallen around them. The boy quickly apologizes for losing track of time, but the monk smiles. Byupgang says it is perfectly fine and tells him to head back home. Mujin bows in thanks and leaves, leaving Byupgang highly impressed by his raw potential. It looks like the kid is ready to start the path of emptiness. But wait, does Mujin not need to memorize all the bodily meridians first? The monk laughs, reminding him that a doctor's son should already know them. Mujin can only nod along awkwardly, sweating a bit at the assumption. Laughing, Byupgang shoos him away before it gets any later. Mujin complains about pretending to be from a doctor's clan. By the next morning, though, the master commands everyone who felt their Kai and memorized the meridians to step forward. Mujin confidently steps out, but to his absolute surprise, he is not the only one. Wait, what is actually happening here? He looks around, taking in the scene. Sensing his Kai was apparently no big deal, since several other novices did it too. The master announces they are ready for the next level, leaving a self-proclaimed genius totally baffled. Holding up a book, the master explains it covers the fundamentals of Shaolin training. Specifically, it is the Buddhist path of emptiness, a crucial foundation for them. Flipping pages, the instructor promises to keep things brief and basic for these beginners. Explaining the basic concepts, he leaves the young novices completely astonished. The other disciples are highly impressed, whispering to each other. They actually sensed their chi and memorized all the meridians in a single day. Soon, Mujin's group returns. Mile immediately questions him on his progress. How did Mujin do that in one day? The answer is simple, it was not that hard. It is only beginner stuff, after all. Mujin explains that the first step is learning how to draw chi into the body and circulate it smoothly. You just have to be careful with the meridians as you advance. Mujin asks Mile if he is following, offering him some sound advice. He tells him to focus on breathing first, the rest will follow. Dedicating himself completely, Mujin memorizes every single meridian until they are perfectly etched in his mind. As a first step to Shaolin mastery, he meditates, feeling his Kai accumulate faster. Even small improvements are enough to cheer him up. This is genuine internal energy cultivation, straight out of the fantasy novels he used to read. He can feel himself growing stronger. His training continues smoothly. But as he quietly practices his Kai meditation, a sudden voice calls out. Turning around, Mujin asks Mile where he has been, only to see him dragging another monk along. Mujin asks in total shock if that is a corpse. Mile corrects him, saying it is Mujin. Mujin asks if he is dead. His friend quickly reassures him that their senior brother Mujin is still alive. Mile explains that he tried waking him up, but the monk was completely unconscious. And honestly, he was just too heavy to carry. Mujin immediately rushes over. He crouches down to inspect the monk sprawled in the dirt, looking closely. He quickly notices that the marks on his body were not from being dragged. The truth becomes instantly clear. Turning to Mile, he breaks the news. Someone beat him up. He points out that the monk was kicked repeatedly. His friend nods in agreement, but then Mujin starts to wonder about something. Why does that name sound so familiar? He tries hard to remember. He recalls seeing a young monk who always looked thin and incredibly dejected. He had only noticed Mujin in passing before, but there is something more. The name rings a major bell, even if he cannot quite picture a face. Pushing those thoughts aside, he asks why Mujin was beaten so brutally. Mael agrees that is a good question, prompting Mujin to ask if he knows. His friend smiles, saying they can easily find out because he has a hunch. Mujin grins, declaring that he knows exactly who they should ask for answers. Since this guy arrived before them, they need to find an older disciple. He brings up the guy he just fought, and Muil instantly knows who he means. Turning around with a frown, Mugong asks them what they want. Muyo doubts it, finding it hard to believe that Mugong actually beat the new kid. It would be a relief if that crybaby had the guts, but Mujin reminds them of something. Mugong is the oldest rookie here, so he knows exactly how things used to be. Walking through the courtyard, the two head forward while Muil follows behind. Carrying the unconscious boy, they stop when Mugong suddenly appears. Mugong demands to know what is going on, causing Muil to lose his footing. He drops the young man, who crashes hard onto the dirt as other monks watch. They stare in silence, and one of them asks if he just killed the poor guy. Glaring at them, Mugong asks why they are interrupting his precious training time. Mujin confronts him, criticizing his attitude and telling him to show some concern. Mugong snaps back, telling Mujin that he should be the one showing some respect. But the young monk simply reminds him that he already beat him once before. Making excuses, Mugong loudly claims he was just caught completely off guard. Muil agrees with him, calling Mujin a brat, which makes Mugong lunge forward. He throws a punch, but Mujin smoothly dodges the strike with ease. He slips behind him, locking Mugong's arm in a painful joint twist. Muyo sighs in disappointment as Mugong gets pinned down yet again. Pinned down, Mujin asks him if he knows why he can never win. Mugong squirms in pain as Mujin decides to offer him a deal. He promises to explain why Mugong keeps losing if he reveals what happened to Mujin. Shaking him off with a sudden burst, Mugong escapes Mujin's tight grip. Brushing off his shoulder, Mujin remarks that the guy is clearly pissed off. For someone as incredibly proud as Mugong, losing like this must be torture. That defeat is eating him alive, making Mugong stop dead in his tracks. Mugong turns around as Mujin demands to know the truth about what happened to Mujin. He reveals that Mujin was brutally beaten by Manhwa and his nasty gang. Mui's family, the Seo clan, protects all of Shaolin's local merchants. Mujin stands next to his father, a mere servant of that wealthy clan. Taking Manhwa as a disciple, Master Hemin also recognized Mujin's talent. He brought him along, but Manhwa hated that a servant's son was now his equal. He bullied Mujin constantly, whose father still works for Manhwa's wealthy family. This makes the whole situation incredibly complicated for the poor boy. Because of this, he cannot just report Manhwa to the temple elders. Gritting his teeth, Mugong says he might understand this in a normal martial school. But pointing at Mujin, he yells that this is Shaolin, the ultimate sacred temple. Why are they doing nothing when they have been here much longer? Mujin defends himself, asking what he could possibly do, but Mugong fires back. Mugong points out there are 3 of them, but Mujin has another argument. He mentions that Muil considers Mugong the absolute strongest among the rookies. Mugong admits they only think that because the other disciples are incredibly lazy. This sparks Mujin's curiosity, recalling that those bullies come from elite allied clans. Mugong explains that these rich disciples already learned basic martial arts beforehand. Because of their prior training, they rarely push themselves hard at Shaolin. Watching them, Mujin realizes this puts them way ahead of the other rookies. Suddenly, they spin around as Mujin finally starts opening his eyes. Sitting up, the disoriented boy weakly asks where on earth he is. He rubs his aching head, completely lost, but seeing the 3 monks standing there makes him scramble backward in pure terror, but Mujin steps forward immediately. He raises his hands in a calm gesture, telling him not to worry. Mujin says Mugong explained everything, and he knows how terrified he is. Inside, Mujin seethes, wondering just how much torment this poor kid had to endure. It is hard to believe such cruelty is happening right under Shaolin's nose. Even going to Master He Zhang might put his father in danger. But Mujin gets a fiercely determined look. There has to be a way. Stepping closer, he tells Mujin that he actually has a plan to help. The trembling boy looks up, asking if he actually wants to save him. Mujin tells him the fix is simple, since the bullies rely on family status. Honestly, targeting their leverage is a smart play, but Mujin is still hesitant. He asks if this is a sick joke, terrified of what happens to his father. Mujin reassures him he already has that covered. All the kid needs to do is become a true disciple. An official disciple commits directly to the main temple's elite order. Those arrogant clan kids are just outsiders, meaning they cannot touch an official disciple. Mujin listens closely, slowly starting to grasp what Mujin is proposing. Mugong gets it as well, suddenly realizing the genius behind this plan. But Mujin is still completely lost, scratching his head in utter confusion. Mujin explains that a mere clan kid could never touch an official disciple's family. He admits there is a risk, but remembers what Bayup Gang once said. Shaolin never abandons its own, and Mujin wants to see if those words hold true. Reaching his hand out, he promises that all of Shaolin will back him up. They will not tolerate this injustice, and nearby, Mujin and the others wait anxiously. Mujin urges him to make a choice, telling him to say something. He gently asks if the boy is just afraid he cannot make the cut. Mujin hesitates, his voice trembling as he stares at that open hand. Mujin asks him straight up if he really wants to keep living like this. Does he really want his father serving those heartless monsters forever? If they do absolutely nothing, his father will end up serving Manhwa. Mujin asks if he can live with that, and Mujin suddenly grabs his hand. The boy declares he will do whatever it takes, and Mujin pulls him up. He smiles, praising his choice, then turns to the rest of the crew. It is time for Phase 2, but Mujin still worries. He is terrified of more beatings, but Mujin tells him not to worry. He has a solid strategy. 3 days later, during their break, a group of monks gathers in the sunny courtyard, looking for trouble. One of Mute's buddies asks if they are absolutely sure Mujin is coming. Mui sneers, confirming he threatened to send a dark warning to the boy's home. Muhai and Muen laugh, eagerly admitting they are already itching for a fight. To them, 2 days without throwing a punch feels like an eternity. One bully asks if the others have seen Mujin hanging out with strange crowds. Specifically with Mujin and Mai, another nods, adding that even the arrogant. Mugong is joining them, meaning more targets to use for hitting practice. Mudai scoffs, calling it lucky since he has been. Wanting to give that punk Mujin a brutal beating, his lackeys eagerly agree. Complaining that the kid always grumbles, they add they never really liked. Mugong's arrogant face either, laughing as they recall making him cry before. One bully promises to make him cry again. Nearby, Mujin whispers to Mugong that the guy clearly hates his face, finally understanding their hostile staring. Walking forward, the group heads straight toward the bullies. Manhwa confronts them for not fleeing, while one of the lackeys loudly taunts Mujin, sneering that he must be feeling good after beating up that poor airhead. Provoking them, Mujin nudges Mugong, who responds by telling the bullies to step forward to shut them up forever. Muil volunteers. Saying he will handle one of them, Mugong decides to take the last opponent, leaving Mujin to fight Manhwa, but Mujin turns, declaring Manhwa belongs to Mugong. Mugong agrees, though he hesitates. Mujin asks if he remembers what he taught him, assuring him he will be fine, yet Mujin still doubts if his friend can truly win. Approaching slowly, Manhwa mocks that Mujin has made some new friends, claiming he is very jealous, staring each other down, the two. You can feel the tension here. They face off as Mudai calls him a crybaby. Mujin promises to put him in his place, as Mudai stops right in front, demanding. Intends to do, asking if he will just stand there or finally fight back. Trembling with fear, Mugong mutters that he simply cannot do it. Muda reminds him of the consequences if he dares to attack, threatening that he knows exactly what will happen to his father. The painful memory of his father flashes in his mind. He recalls Mujin explaining there is only one real way to save him, by teaching them a harsh lesson and becoming a true Shaolin disciple. Tears pooling in his eyes, he tells them not to dare, advancing and shouting not to touch his father. Surprised by this outburst, Mui reacts and retaliates with a quick strike. Meanwhile, Muil blocks Mui's heavy punch. Muhai admits that the kid is not just some fool. Mugong catches Muen's fist, surprising him with sheer strength. Muen instantly senses a difference, noting his opponent is not just stronger but entirely different. Something has completely shifted inside Mugong. Looking back, he remembers refusing to help. Mujin had questioned his courage, asking if he was too scared to act like an older brother, saying that since Mugong agreed to help, they could stop discussing it, but Mugong cuts him off, demanding a real answer to why he always loses his fights. Explaining, Mujin says his chain fist is incredibly fast and powerful, but that is all. Taking a solid fighting stance, he dares him to dodge, throwing a lightning-fast punch. He watches Mugong barely slip past, offering a quick compliment. Announcing his second technique, he tells him to try dodging again. Firing off with a shout, he prepares to strike as Mugong concentrates fully to avoid the strike, but instead of a fist, Mujin sweeps him with a low kick, tumbling on the floor. Mugong whines that he lied, but Mujin calmly explains that no enemy. On the ground, Mugong complains about being lied to. Mujin explains that no opponent he will let him attack. He explains that deception is key. True enough, Mujin admits his strikes are fast. They are fast and powerful, but his body posture telegraphs everything. Mugong scoffs, believing that sheer strength is always enough. He just needs to hit faster. Mujin sighs, nodding slightly. That strategy only works for the absolute strongest man alive, which he is not. To illustrate, he brings up a famous character from a classic martial arts novel. He says the warrior of the sinister faction was supreme. It was completely unavoidable, even if you knew it was coming. But until Mugong actually becomes the absolute strongest warrior alive, that lazy logic is completely useless. Instead of relying on sheer force, he suggests learning smart combat tricks first. It is like tricking someone in a simple game of rock, paper, scissors. Returning to their spar, Mugong tightly clenches Muen's fist, mocking his weak effort. He boldly announces his very next move, openly declaring that a devastating strike is coming his way. He unleashes the first form of the chain fist, daring him to dodge it. In his mind, Mugong considers using some deception, wondering if it really works. He had always dismissed clever trickery as simple cheating, but now he finally sees the light. Admitting that Mujin is right, he offers to teach him something, a fair trade right. Mujin is naturally curious, but Mugong warns him not to take Muai lightly. Those aggressive bullies are on a completely different level, leaving Mujin extremely confused by his warning. Mugong reveals that he was holding back during their first fight. In actual combat, they will unleash their true family martial arts and inner power. Because of this, he leads the others to a very secluded, quiet spot. Deep inside the ancient temple grounds, he finally stops and decides this hidden clearing will work perfectly. He clarifies that he cannot let any temple adults witness his family martial arts. Asking for absolute caution, he specifically requests that Mule keep watch so they are not caught. Intrigued, Mujin asks him to show off his special family style. Mugong hopes this demonstration will finally win him some respect. He focuses deeply, starting the movements with a sudden shout. His strength explodes. Watching closely, Mujin observes. He immediately realizes that this is nothing like the simple chain fist he saw before. There is a deep, explosive power behind every single strike. It is surprisingly advanced and incredibly impressive for someone his age. Now he understands why underestimating these kids would be a major mistake. Every single strike makes the very air around them crackle with force. Manhwa and his friends are definitely going to be dangerous opponents. Mugong suddenly halts his strike right in its tracks. Stopping right before hitting Mule, he asks about his power. Mujin admits it is impressive, confirming he is indeed the strongest. However, he calmly points out that Mugong still lacks a complete mastery over his inner strength. Even so, Mujin realizes this situation is still totally manageable. He quickly slides into a firm defensive stance, preparing himself for his opponent's next move. The lackey charges forward with a loud warning, launching his attack. Watching him close the distance, Mujin realizes something about their power. They must stick strictly to their set martial arts forms. Compares to Mugong, that guy's punch is like a baby's, and as expected he dodges the blow with absolute ease. Seeing this, Mujin realizes they are using the chain fist style, making their movements highly predictable. Shocked, the lackey realizes his attack was completely dodged. Now, by this he knows Mujin didn't beat Mugong by pure luck. He starts to back away. Mujin charges in, unleashing a flurry of lightning-fast strikes. Asking if it is his turn to attack now, the desperate lackey raises his arms, shielding his face. Noticing this guard, Mujin asks if he's only protecting his face, then drives a brutal punch right into his stomach. Meanwhile, Mui swings at Muil, but Muil dodges and trips him. It's a perfect mirror of their previous clash. Mujin watches closely as Mugong charges up. Devastating punch against Muon. His heavy fist slams down, triggering an explosion. Smashed into the dirt, Muon struggles to rise. Watching this, Mude is left utterly speechless. He even starts to wonder if they are the bad guys now, seeing their beaten opponents look so helpless after all that bullying. Turning around, he looks to check on the rest of his crew. Mugong and Muil have already finished their fights. They laughingly comment that they didn't even need to break a sweat, but then a bizarre, wet sound echoes. Mujin asks where Mujiang is. Disturbed by the horrifying noise, they look around, only to find Mujiang savagely beating Mui over and over. On the ground, charging toward them, Mujin yells for him to stop. Seeing the boy's crazed state, a sudden memory flashes. He finally realizes why Mujiang's name sounded so familiar. A dark, terrifying vision of a boy battering an opponent's head into the dirt floods his mind, along with a wild, blood-drenched gaze. In that moment, Mujin realizes there is absolutely no doubt this kid is indeed the most terrifying character from the original novel. The ultimate villain with an insatiable bloodlust, and he is none other than Mujiang the Bloody Monk. Recalling his favorite childhood web novel, Mujin cannot remember every single detail, but one chilling illustration remains forever etched. In his mind, it showed a blood-soaked monk screaming about the wickedness of the world, claiming only blood could purify humanity, and this scene right now mirrors that exact same terrifying monster from those pages. Mujin panics, wondering what on earth he has done, intending only to boost the kid's confidence. He accidentally unleashed a literal demon. Sensing the extreme danger, he knows that if he does not stop this, Mui will die. Sprinting forward, he begs Muil to help him restrain the crazed boy, grabbing. The two work together to restrain Mujiang while he screams to let go. Mujiang finally halts, panting heavily with blood dripping from his knuckles. Everyone stares in horror at Mui's unconscious body. Mujin realizes the situation could have been far worse. Dropping to his knees, Mujiang begins to sob. Watching this, Mujin sighs in relief. The boy is not yet that ruthless monster. In the original novel, the Bloody Monk was just introduced as a madman. With zero explanation of his past, Mujiang must have suffered an absolute nightmare of bullying until one day he just snapped. Suddenly, a monk named Bupgang stepped into the hallway, demanding to know what was going on. They turned around and instantly knew they were doomed. Bupgang marched over. "Explain yourselves right now," he demanded. He pointed at the boys on the ground. "What the hell is going on here?" He turned to Mujin. The boy only hesitated, so Mujin shouted. Mujin snapped back, demanding to know if the elder wanted an explanation or not. Bupgang listed every boy. Meanwhile, Mujin suddenly rolled Mujin over. He wanted the Inquisitor to see. Shocked, Bupgang stared blankly. "What are you doing?" Bupgang snapped, but Mujin told him to just look. "Look at his back," Bupgang gasped, seeing the horrific bruises. And honestly, seeing those awful marks would make anyone sick to their stomach. Mujin explained the truth. These bruises came from 2 months of endless beatings. The bullies cornered Mujin again today. That is why they intervened. They had to stop it. They couldn't just stand by. "Is that true?" Bupgang turned and demanded answers from the others. "Tell me the truth," he ordered Myo and Muan to stand up. Hearing the desperate screams, other monks rushed into the hallway to investigate. The boys only trembled on the ground. Silence, they couldn't speak. A newcomer stared at Muoi's unconscious body. What the hell happened? Bupgang turned back to Mujin. "Tell me everything in your own words." Mujin hesitated. He began to tremble, completely lost and unable to speak. Mujin placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just tell the truth. Brother Bupgang is a very fair person. You don't have to be afraid." Mujin nodded. Mujin was right, and he slowly began to speak. He confessed that Myoi, Mui, and Muan had been brutalizing him for 2 months. His voice shook. He broke down in tears, explaining his entire nightmare. The monks watched in silence. Mujin and Muil waited for a reaction. Though panic-stricken, Mujin made the harsh reality absolutely clear. Mujin stepped forward, reminding Bupgang of his own words. Shaolin never turns its back on a disciple. It was his duty. But Bupgang argued, those other children are also Shaolin disciples. Mujin challenged him, asking if those monsters actually deserved that title. Can children who use terror and threats to abuse others be called disciples? Is that the true spirit of Shaolin? Bupgang could only silently agree. Just then Hyengsung arrived. "We will investigate this case," he stated. However, the accusations would only stand if they were proven entirely true. The Arhat Hall director made his firm stance very clear. If guilty, those bullies will be expelled from Shaolin immediately. Mujin nodded. "I believe the investigation will be fair and open. But of course, someone always has to come along and ruin the moment." Hyengsung questioned who would brutalize children, since martial arts should only subdue them. Pointing at Muoi's broken body, Hyengsung watched as Mujin knelt in apology. The boy desperately raised his hand, trying to take all the blame. But Mujin stepped forward, taking absolute responsibility for the violent clash. He admitted his anger got the best of him after seeing Mujin abused. Mujin begs him not to, but Mujin still steps up to take the blame. He takes full blame. He completely understands the gravity of the situation. If he betrays Mujin now, who knows when the bloody monk awakens? Instead of a demon, the boy could become their greatest ally. Bupgang explains, this quiet room is where they practice Buddhist meditation. He informs Mujin that for the next 7 days, he must stay completely silent and isolated. It is strict ascetic training. Reaching their destination, Bupgang points to a cave where the boy will complete his punishment. He tells Mujin he must sit perfectly upright, face the wall, meditate without ever looking away. Even to eat or sleep, Mujin agrees and steps inside. He always thought Jiang's novels shared a universe, but now a character from another book has actually appeared right in front of him. The demonic masters return and the fall of the sinister faction definitely occurred in the exact same shared universe as this story. The two main heroes lived in completely different regions, so they rarely met. But later in the story, the new monk from Shaolin shows up, making Mujin realize his actions can rewrite entire timelines. He wonders if his interference is ruining the development of other characters. To survive and grow stronger, he definitely needs some powerful allies. But he only remembers them as young kids from books he read 10 long years ago, leaving him with very few details. He wonders if the Shaolin story will fall apart if they all become friends and mess up the original plot. Since he is already involved with Mujin, he must watch closely. After all, it is by fighting this fearsome bloody monk that the hero of that other tale achieves his legendary enlightenment and grows stronger. If the bloody monk is saved now, the hero stays weak. The entire timeline is a complete and absolute mess. Mujin has no idea where to even start fixing it. Meanwhile, outside the cave, Bayapgang watches him in total silence. Seeing the boy focus completely on his punishment is mind-blowing. How does a 12-year-old have such intense discipline? With talent like this, he could be truly special. Meanwhile, back at the temple, Headmaster Hyan Moon sighs heavily. He laments failing their values, but Hijjong quickly takes the blame. Hijjong takes the blame for losing control of the situation. Hyan Moon changes the subject, asking for the investigation results. Hijjong reports that all the young novices confirmed the truth. Mujin was being severely bullied on a daily basis. This massive scandal will easily ruin Shaolin's pristine and legendary reputation. Just then, Bayapgang arrives at Arhat Hall and requests entrance. Inside, Hyansong asks if Hyan Moon noticed the newcomer's hands. The master cook nods in agreement, confirming that he saw them too. Just one look at Mujin's battered hands and face was enough to prove everything. Reflecting on the one who harmed Muoi, Hyanmun notes this situation could be a blessing in disguise, a chance to make up for everything, meaning that without Mujin, things could be worse. The three men fall silent. They stand together in the quiet room for a moment before Bayapgang speaks up. He asks the master for permission to share his thoughts on the situation. The master grants it. Bayapgang insists the issue is not about placing blame, as everyone bears some guilt. Instead of grieving, they must focus on prevention. The headmaster speaks up, asking if he has a specific plan in mind. Bayapgang humbly explains his view, noting that everything happened simply because the disciples lack proper discipline. He explains that the bullying was only possible because the kids had too much energy. To prevent further trouble, training must be intensified until they are completely exhausted. Bayapgang requests permission to proceed with this new training regime. Hyanmun readily agrees and entrusts the task to Bayapgang and Hyejong while he handles other pressing matters. He then announces that the three guilty disciples will face strict punishment. His first stop will be the discipline hall to set things right, later returning to the cave. Bayapgang promises the master he will handle the boys with care. Peering inside, he is deeply impressed that Mujin has not budged for almost an hour and a half. Bayapgang starts to enter but hesitates at the threshold. He decides to check back in the morning, letting Mujin continue meditating while he takes care of the boys' daily water and rations. Inside the cave, the young monk remains dead silent until he speaks up. That man is finally gone, he mutters. Having spent 7 years in the special forces, he learned to sense any presence in the wild, throwing himself onto the cold floor. He wonders how on earth he will survive 7 days without any source of proper protein. He lies flat, desperately craving real meat. He remembers the crispy fried chicken he enjoyed right before arriving here. Recalled the golden batter and juicy texture. Honestly, who wouldn't crave that? I absolutely need meat, he groans, staring blankly up at the cave ceiling. But where can he get any? Suddenly, he looks toward the cave entrance with a realization. He simply has to hunt. Not far away, a young girl chases a rabbit through the forest. The white rabbit flees in terror, leaping directly toward a hidden rope trap. She crouches in the dense brush, watching the trap closely. Out of nowhere, Mujin lunges and catches the fleeing rabbit in midair. I got the protein, he cheers, celebrating the fresh meat he just snagged. Shocked, the hidden girl watches him from the bushes in total silence. Meanwhile, in Yichuan Prefecture, just a short distance from the Shaolin Temple, trouble is brewing in the city streets. A group of Shaolin disciples works tirelessly to gather crucial information, questioning local residents to understand the current situation. They soon uncover the dark truth of what has been happening in the area. Shortly after, they arrive at the gates of the powerful Seo merchant group, where they are quickly invited inside. Leading the group is Hiego, the head of Shaolin's external affairs. A flustered man rushes forward to greet them warmly. He welcomes them inside, introducing himself with a respectful bow. "I am Manhwa Seo, the guild head and Mua's father," he states. He bows and says it is a true honor to meet the Grandmaster of the Five Unmatched Fists. Behind the monks, Mua cowers and shakes as Manhwa Seo demands answers. He asks why his son is in this state, demanding an immediate explanation. Hegel steps forward, addressing Manhwa Seo, the leader of the merchant protectors. He explains that Mua brought this on himself through his own wicked actions. He bullied his peer instead of cultivating his own mind and body. Furious, Manhwa Seo tries to argue, but the monk cuts him off. He adds that their investigation has actually uncovered far worse secrets. It turns out these merchant protectors are nothing but common bandits. They extort the locals, and Hegel can barely hide his disgust. He cannot believe a group tied to Shaolin would commit such evil. He orders his disciples to shut this place down and strip their martial arts. Refusing to submit, Manhwa Seo commands his men to stop the monks. Stepping forward, Manhwa Seo unleashes a flurry of relentless strikes. He ends his assault with a heavy, direct punch to the chest. Standing over the fallen men, Hegel notes their inner energy is gone. He demands they return every coin they have stolen from the people. Shaken to their core, the defeated fighters realize their entire operation is completely ruined. Hegel then approaches the gathered crowd and asks if Jinbang is among them. An elderly man steps forward, introducing himself and asking how he can help. Recognizing him, the old man gasps that Hegel is from the temple. Bowing, Hegel apologetically reveals that Mua had bullied Jinbang's son, Mujin. With a heavy voice, Jinbang asks if his son was being bullied. He declares firmly that no apology can ever make up for this. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Mujin stops in his tracks to think. Spotting a crude, poorly made trap on the ground, he wonders who built it. Looking closer, he realizes it looks like a terrible copy of his own. He wonders if someone is trying to copy him out here in the wild. Suddenly, a faint rustle in the bushes causes the young monk to turn. He peers through the thick leaves, locking eyes with a hidden figure. For a tense second, neither moves, but then the girl suddenly bolts. As she runs, Mujin shouts out that he already spotted her. Fleeing desperately, she looks back, hoping she somehow managed to lose him. Mujin lunges forward and grabs her, sending them both crashing down. They roll through the brush before he realizes he is pinned over her. Blushing, the girl quickly apologizes, stammering that she did not mean it. Scrambling up, Mujin apologizes too, before offering her some roasted meat. He remarks that she must be starving if she was hunting rabbits too. Huddled near the fire, she curiously asks if monks are even allowed meat. Mujin gives a vague answer, telling her not to worry about it. He then asks why she is wandering deep within private Shaolin territory. She looks down in silence as painful memories of her father surface. She remembers crying, wondering why everyone hated her for just existing. Sensing her deep sadness, Mujin gently decides to change the subject. He asks for a small favor, begging her to keep this secret. She must never tell anyone about his secret rabbit feast in the woods. She curiously asks if it is because monks are forbidden from eating meat, but he simply tells her he has his reasons, then offers to help her get back home, which catches her completely off guard. He explains that a shirtless monk with quite some influence will pass by soon, and she can ask him for help. Curious, she asks how he knows the man is coming, and Mujin simply replies that he can feel it. He instructs her to just wait right in front of the cave while Bupgang approaches. The girl steps out to meet the monk and begs him for help. Surprised to see her, he asks what an outsider is doing here, so she explains she got separated from her group, agreeing. Bupgang promises to help her get home. Suddenly, his mood shifts, and his expression grows incredibly serious as he looks toward the cave, asking if she saw a little boy nearby. Inside the dark cave, Mujin feels a sudden shiver run down his spine. Keeping her promise of secrecy, the girl tells him that she was too terrified to approach the cave and has not seen anyone around, concluding. Bupgang figures that Mujin must still be deep in meditation, deciding to return. Later, he invites her to walk down the mountain with him so he can personally escort her home, and she warmly thanks him. As they walk, he asks for her name and she introduces herself as Seola Ryu. Meanwhile, inside the cave, Mujin listens closely until he is absolutely certain the older monk is finally gone. Collapsing onto the ground, he sighs about how exhausted he is, realizing he already forgot the girl's name, but he decides it doesn't matter anyway. Elsewhere, Mujin greets Bupgang and asks if he needs anything. The monk replies that they need to discuss something involving the boy's father. Bupgang explains that the co-trade merchant protector faction, run by his tormentor's family, has been completely shut down. He also reveals that the Shaolin Temple secured another position for his father elsewhere. He advises the boy to stop worrying about the outside world altogether and focus on becoming a true disciple. Mujin looks back with fierce determination. In his eyes, the young monk promises to give his absolute all and swears to do whatever is necessary to achieve his goal. By the fourth day, Mujin uses his special forces survival training to hunt for food. He remembers cooking for the girl over a campfire, a slip-up that almost exposed him. After that, he moves his entire operation to another hidden cave nearby, to avoid leaving any clues behind, meticulously cleaning up after himself every single time. He even roasts animals inside a covered clay pit to suppress the smoke. Believe it or not, this is his first real taste of meat since arriving at the strict temple, providing his body with some desperately needed protein. Before dawn, Mujin wakes up and sits in the lotus position to meditate against the wall, doing so only because he senses a powerful presence approaching. Soon enough, Bupgang arrives at the cave, highly impressed to find the boy already meditating. Diligently, he steps inside, wondering if Mujin stayed awake all night to repent. He places a bamboo container and a pouch of fresh rations on the ground. Marveling that Mujin remains completely unfazed by his arrival, the senior monk leaves the supplies right beside him before quietly walking away. Once he is completely gone, Mujin opens his eyes to make sure he is alone before grabbing the food. He honestly thinks they are going way too far, expecting kids to survive on that for a whole week. They only give him water and basic meditation pills once a day, but he gets his actual nutrition by hunting forest game. He is already completely used to the harsh routine. By the sixth dawn, he is already inside his cave doing quick warm-ups, knowing he needs to burn through his nutrients and build muscle right away. While moving, he suddenly picks up on something pretty major. During his workout, his breathing naturally aligns with his special martial arts technique. To test this, he starts mixing his void training with standard gymnastics to forge a custom method. Mujin instantly feels his body responding, though he does not fully realize the sheer scale of his breakthrough. What he is doing is actually a form of advanced fluid cultivation training. On the seventh day, Bupgang finally announces that his isolation is over. Standing up, Mujin immediately asks if he can speak again, and the monk happily confirms it, but he also warns him that morning drills are starting immediately, ordering him to get straight back to the main training grounds. On their walk back, Mujin asks how the whole situation with Mujin got Settled, Biupgang explains that they investigated Mua's clan and exposed major corruption among the trade merchant protectors. Consequently, the entire clan got dissolved, their martial techniques were stripped away, and Mujiang's father was safely relocated to a new post. Biupgang also mentions that the standard training level has spiked over the past week to keep things fair for the other disciples. Mujin has to follow the official Shaolin regimen now, the boy suggests, taking the difficulty up a notch while keeping his own personalized training routine. Biupgang simply replies they will see as they arrive at the Arhat Hall training ground. The moment he steps inside, Muil rushes over to welcome him back. Mujin asks how things have been, and Muil groans that it was brutal. Mujiang admits he nearly quit, but Mugong boasts that it was an absolute breeze. The young monk just laughs. Suddenly, Master Heejong interrupts, announcing that morning practice starts now, ordering all the kids to quickly fall in. An older disciple drops a heavy sack, making Mujin wonder what is inside. The other boys recognize the heavy sandbags and start strapping them onto themselves. The master commands everyone to secure the weights and line back up, which makes Mujin wonder if this was how they made training harder, and honestly, aside from his return, it is the same brutal morning grind. With the extra weight, the kids are quickly drenched in sweat, but Mujin decides to use his sandbags as makeshift dumbbells to squeeze in some extra work. They are totally unbalanced and hard to grip, but he is not trying to win a bodybuilding contest, so they work perfectly. Watching him, senior disciples note that Mujin is still stubbornly doing things his own way. Biupgang walks over to him, and the other kids assume he is finally getting chewed out. Walking up, Biupgang sternly reminds him that training has officially intensified. But he secretly notices Mujin is pushing his limits far beyond the rest. Suddenly, he senses a deep, heavy energy pulsing from the young monk, realizing it is fluid cultivation. This rare skill is only possible once someone masters gathering qi, a difficult method of storing up powerful energy while staying in motion. Unleashing energy this way allows a fighter to completely shatter normal human physical limits. Suddenly, performing superhuman feats like shattering solid stone becomes possible. They can soar through the sky, move like lightning, and master legendary martial arts. Something catches their eye, and it is not normal. He is just glad they finally provided these heavy sandbags. Immediately, he starts cranking out triceps extensions with the heavy sandbags. While the other disciples barely survive, Mujin is busy treating sandbags like modern gym weights. Feeling his muscles pump, the boy smiles, satisfied. The other boys stare in complete shock. What is wrong with him? But get this, Biupgang sees something far deeper in the kid. Watching closely, the master realizes this is actually the legendary fluid cultivation. He is stunned, wondering where a mere kid learned such high-level arts. Biupgang approaches, asks for a quick word, and tells Mujin to follow him. Later, Master Heejong nods, confirming that Biupgang's wild theory was absolutely correct. It is definitely fluid cultivation, but how has Mujin mastered it already? Mujin instantly remembers practicing it back in the cave during his harsh punishment. But that means confessing he broke the rules. No way. He calmly tells the masters that this was actually his very first time trying it. He blames his clan's breathing style and the rush of training again. He claims he just combined their deep breathing tricks with standard inhales and exhales. This ridiculous excuse leaves both masters completely speechless, stunned. Heejong knows fluid cultivation usually requires years of deep void training. Biupgang agrees, adding that even talented seniors struggle to grasp this. While void training takes several years, almost no disciples master fluid cultivation so quickly. Because of this, most disciples must build a massive foundation before attempting mental training. They usually transition to advanced mental cultivation much later. Instead of wasting 12 hours a day trying to force it, they study elsewhere. They could easily learn multiple other mental techniques to control their energy. But if a genius like Mujin masters the path of the void instantly, then they can gather internal Kai at a truly terrifying, monstrous pace. Honestly, Hijun can only wonder how fast this boy will conquer these advanced mental arts. If he mastered fluid cultivation so easily, his potential is limitless. The master collects himself, steps forward, and asks Mujin a serious question. He asks if Mujin can use fluid cultivation whenever he wants. Mujin lies smoothly, claiming he can only do it during his clan workouts. The young monk asks to return to training, and Hijung immediately nods in approval. Mujin runs off, leaving the master sighing about getting excited over nothing. He catches up with Mujin, asking if they should get right back to it. Mujin approaches the others, asking if they are practicing the forelimb stretching technique. Mael proudly confirms it, explaining that the others were really eager to learn. Mugong speaks up, praising Mael for being such a surprisingly good teacher. He feels much better after the training, even if his muscles still burn. Mujin remembers teaching Mael the routine, shocked by how fast he grasped it. He never paid much attention to Mael before, since the boy was completely forgotten in Mujiang's diaries. But now Mujin realizes this kid's latent talent is actually pretty insane. He is skilled yet incredibly simple, leaving Mujin to wonder why he never became a true master. He probably does not know the meridians, so Mujin turns back to Mugong. Deciding to figure that out later, he turns to the young boy instead. Mujin asks if Muil has been teaching him, wanting to see his skills. Mugong struggles, he cannot even count the movements while everyone cheers him on. Next, they follow the tough military routine. Someone instantly groans. He asks if feeling this much pain is normal, prompting Mujin to correct. Their posture, he warns Mugong about clenched fists and tells Mujiang to stretch out his arm before announcing they will move on to breathing. The boys line up, carefully following the count. Mugong feels relieved. This part is incredibly easy, and everyone is doing great. Then he watches Muil. He reflects on the boy's time training with Mujin, noting his incredible flexibility, which completely stuns the other monks. Meanwhile, Mujin thinks of Mual. He observes the very kid who ruined his chance to become a true disciple. Mual is highly skilled but simple-minded. He also remembers Mujiang beating up Muai. Even with all these impressive geniuses around, Mugong vows to keep up. Easily, meanwhile, Mujin lifts heavy new sandbags during his morning training. In his spare time, he continues to diligently cultivate his inner energy. He also leads them in stretching, demanding that everyone keep their backs straight. Two nearby monks watch him, whispering quietly to each other. One asks if the other has noticed anything different about Mujin's build. He wonders if his shoulders look wider, though his friend cannot tell. Is this because of those bizarre daily exercises? Then, the 10th day arrives. Master Haijing gathers the novices, announcing it is time for inner energy training. He calls a disciple forward to show everyone how it is done. The master explains the first form, showing how the inner force is drawn. It must be drawn straight from the Kai center before being directed. The energy needs to split, sending power toward the shoulders and collarbone. Concentrating deeply, Mujin gathers the energy in his core and raises it. He remembers the rule to split the flow 7-3. Assuming the final stance of the chain-link fist, he moves fast. With one swift motion, he executes the form, questioning his own hand. He feels a rush of inner strength fortify every part of his body. Now he gets it, splitting the energy prevents any loss of balance. It makes perfect sense to distribute power to other body parts. Master Haijing then explains that they must also send qi to their legs. Mujin smiles, he was right, but this triggers a whole new idea. Think about it, if that is true, his potential is absolutely limitless. Energy should not just split between the arms, but run down his legs. That requires total body control. Staring at his arm, he realizes something. This technique is vastly more complicated than it looks. How much training would it actually take to master and use this during a real, live combat scenario? He looks over at the other monks struggling. Mujin is moving clumsy. The boy asks if he is doing it right. Mujin quickly approaches. He asks what Mujin is doing, and his friend admits he forgot the order. The young monk lists the meridians in the wrong order, but gets corrected on the proper sequence. Then he completely messes up the direction of the flowing energy. So Mujin corrects him, pointing out that he is right-handed. Finally, Mujin recalled the advice while Mujin watched him in silence. Mujin tells the kid to ignore the complicated meridian names and focus on bringing his inner energy straight down into his lower belly. Next, Mujin tells him to guide the energy up into another vital point and then to his shoulder. Mujin manages the flow easily and celebrates this simple trick. Mujin advises him to always ask questions if he gets confused, suspecting his friend might immediately forget. Sure enough, the clumsy young monk fumbles and asks where the energy goes. Then, Mujin realizes his friend has the memory of a goldfish. Master Haijang and the second-generation disciples taught them a new fundamental form every day. Afterwards, they kept training each young novice based on their personal needs, continuing this hard training for 70 days until the present moment. One by one, every single novice, including Mujin, mastered the 10 fundamental forms of the chain-link fist. Mugong warns a struggling boy who is doing push-ups that 20 seconds are up, prompting the kid to stand up from the floor. Mujin turns around and suggests doing some heavy squats. During the morning training, Baepgang watches the disciples putting in work. Suddenly, he demands to know who is breathing so heavily, turning his gaze toward a small group of monks doing squats with heavy sandbags. He is shocked to see how many sandbags Mujin is lifting. The boy's muscle and raw power are insane for his age. His physical capability completely eclipses all of the other young novices. Baepgang marvels at how the boy built this incredible physique in just 2 months, wondering if his old views were wrong. He recalls Mujin's prior advice about proper posture and modern training routines. Sitting alone, he wonders if their ancient Shaolin training methods are flawed. Master Hyunsong approaches and asks why he is still lingering there. Since the training session ended, Baepgang stands to greet him and quickly senses that something is deeply troubling the elder. Master Hyunsong advises him to share any heavy burdens to make them lighter. He gently asks what is bothering him, so Baepgang confesses his concerns about their outstanding new disciple, Mujin, admitting he simply cannot understand him. Later, Baepgang informs Mujin that Master Hyunsong wants to speak with him. The other young novices instantly react, asking what trouble the boy caused this time and telling him to quickly apologize. Baepgang hurries him along since the master is waiting, and Mujin follows behind, stepping inside the room. Mujin wonders if he accidentally made a mistake without realizing it. He questions what Hyunsong, the master of the Arhat Hall, could want with him. Hyunsong reflects on Mujin's massive physical growth in such a short period. He clearly senses the boy's limitless potential, but Baepgang's deep concern left him highly intrigued. The master then ordered Baepgang to bring Mujin in, explaining that this is not a matter they can resolve just among themselves. He believes it would be far better to meet the boy face to face and discuss everything directly. Now Mujin stands respectfully before the master, who is seated at the table. Staring at the silent elder, the young novice wonders what is going on. Why call him here just to stare in silence when he should be training? It is not just about how the master looks at him, but rather who he truly is. He feels himself being scanned from head to toe, every single inch under intense scrutiny. Completely judged, then he flexes his muscles, claiming he is not in peak shape yet. Master Hyunsong asks what on earth he is doing, and Mujin replies that he was just posing. Just showing off. The master notes it has been quite some time since they actually talked. Mujin agrees, pointing out they have not spoken since that major incident. Still, he remembers their intense fight, wondering if this sudden summon is related to it. But Hyunsong just sips his tea, calmly stating he simply needed to see him. The master adds that seeing him in person makes everything certain. Mujin asks what exactly he means, prompting the master to praise his incredibly fast development. He has outpaced all other rookies, proving those wild rumors were absolutely true. But that is not the sole reason for this meeting, as he asks about his training. He wants to know if this rapid growth comes from his own clan's secret training. Mujin immediately senses trouble, predicting they will try to force the Shaolin way. So he directly asks if the master wants to compare their training styles. But the master quickly denies it, waving off any sort of accusation. Instead, Hyunsong explains that Shaolin is not nearly as rigid as people think. He wants to suggest something. The boy instantly remembers Haijong screaming about training. Wondering what the catch is, he asks what the master actually has in mind. The master explains Shaolin survived for 1,000 years by adapting, but Mujin is still confused. He admits he does not get it, so Hyunsong proposes a test. If Mujin can prove his clan's techniques work, they might actually adopt them. He means those highly unusual modern workouts, leaving Mujin completely stunned. Wait, could this actually work? He wonders if they will truly accept his strange training methods. As head of the Arhat Hall, Hyunsong is a monk focused entirely on future progress. He's willing to make tough, controversial choices for their sake. But introducing these bizarre training methods is going to be a massive gamble. He plans to test them on the young disciples first, taking full responsibility if it fails. Sure, he might get punished, but he believes the risk is absolutely worth it. If these workouts actually succeed, they could fundamentally strengthen the entire temple. But Mujin flatly refuses, demanding to know why it has to be him. Master Hyunsong does not appreciate the attitude and just glares back at him sternly. Then he barks right back, demanding to know who else could possibly do it. Mujin argues there are over 70 other rookies, and he has his own training to finish. Besides, the other disciples treat him like a total freak and will never listen. They just won't. Sure, training the rookies makes sense, since he is technically part of the sect now. But he really does not want to babysit a bunch of annoying little brats. So he tells the master that if they want his help, he has some conditions. Later that night, the young monks are sleeping soundly when they are suddenly jolted awake. A loud shout orders them to get up immediately, sending them scrambling out the door. One confused monk asks if it is already time, since the morning bell has not rung. The voice barks at them to run, yelling that they did not come here to sleep. The confused monks gather outside, having absolutely no idea what is going on. That is when they spot Mujin in the courtyard, alongside Master Haijong and Biup Gang. The master steps forward, explaining exactly why they have been woken up so early. Because they just added new warm-up exercises to morning training. Furthermore, Master Haijong announces that morning sessions will be led entirely by Mujin. Naturally, the other rookies do not take this well. Since they are all the same age, he is pretty unpopular among them, but now is officially in charge, he cannot show even a hint of weakness. He barks out orders, instantly activating his strict instructor mode. Starting today, morning training follows my own clan's secret methods. During this time, I am no longer just one of you, and everyone must call me instructor. Observing from afar, Master Haijong is thoroughly surprised. Bop Gang instantly notices the fierce, burning determination shining brightly in his young eyes. Mudai simply scoffs at him, while another monk smiles right behind. The rookies mock the entire idea, loudly asking why they should listen. Mujin asks if they find this funny. Now watch how he handles them. Will they still be laughing by the end of morning training? Everyone steps back. The young instructor challenges anyone who has a problem to step forward. When the group actually steps forward, Mujin challenges them directly. If I falter for even a single second, I will resign immediately and join you. As another disciple, Mujin positions himself right in the center of the courtyard surrounded by the hostile monks, asking if that is finally everyone. Then he boldly declares he will face them all at once, bracing himself for the fight. At his command, the boys charge forward, simultaneously launching a massive flurry of punches. A flurry of punches lands on empty air. Wait, where did he go? Mujin reappears, crouching low right among them, asking if that is all. With a swift, blinding movement, he positions himself right behind them. He grabs him in a tight arm lock while the others scream to do something. Mujin prepares his destructive chain-link fist, unleashing it on the two monks in front. In seconds, all his attackers fall defeated to the ground. He looks at the rest of the silent crowd, demanding to know if anyone wants more. The other disciples remain silent, and Mujin reminds them he is deadly serious. Pointing directly at them, he loudly declares that from this moment on, everyone must call him instructor. He starts the count for push-ups, giving a harsh warning. If anyone's stomach touches the dirty ground, they will carry double the heavy sandbags. The young monks begin the training, and Mujin orders them to extend on two. Watching the brutal routine, Bop Gang reflects on just how incredibly skilled he is. He concludes that Mujin must have had plenty of teaching experience. The training runs smoothly, but he cannot possibly supervise 70 disciples alone. So he turns Mujiang, Mugong, and Muyu into assistant instructors. These new assistants quickly correct the bad posture of the other young monks. This allows Mujin to supervise and train everyone much more effectively. He believes that leading other children of the same age will really boost Mugong's self-esteem. Bop Gang, acting more like a soldier than a monk, found his ideal training system. He reflects on how those wild children were just playing a short while ago, and now they train with absolute life-or-death seriousness. Bop Gang advises Mujin to take it easy initially, but be tough if they. Mujin shouts out, asking if everyone learned their lesson, even though they were raw novices. The results came quickly, with their strength and muscle tone visibly improving. Mujin approaches the adult monks to ask if they managed to do what he requested. Over time, they saw the undeniable effects and came to trust the boy completely, confirming that everything was ready. At last, his new training equipment finally arrives, and he celebrates. This was what he negotiated from the master in exchange for teaching the children. A complete weightlifting set with a bench, a bar, and plates. He notes that, except for the iron bar, everything is crafted from wood, but it works. He can simply use sandbags as dumbbells, even with 3 little helpers. Managing over 70 children was pushing his limits and eating into his personal training. That is why he requested this custom setup. Mujin gets incredibly pumped to introduce the 3 big lifts to Shaolin. This training is guaranteed to make the children significantly stronger. Through intense daily workouts, he hits a brand new level of strength. The makeshift setup weighs nearly 90 kilograms, and at only 13 he is already growing taller, powering through sets of squats with the heavy bar. On his back, Mujin flexes, calculating his current 3-lift total. It sits around 230 kilograms. He feels he could hit 300 kilograms for a single rep max. Absolutely wild, right? Time flies. Golden autumn fades into heavy winter snows, which melt into fresh spring greenery. Eventually, 20 of the novices leave Shaolin, unable to master martial arts. Within their first year, Master Haiyuzhang informs Haiyan Song that nearly 50 children are still here, almost triple the prior batch. Haiyan Song laughs, crediting it all to Mujin, becoming his biggest supporter. He even wonders if they can secure more equipment for the Arhat Hall. Having witnessed the incredible benefits of Mujin's gym methods, he wants more. But despite Shaolin's massive reputation, their budget has very strict limits. So Haiyan Song reflects on his 50 years of seeking spiritual enlightenment, realizing that the upcoming disciple admission test cannot come soon enough. This is the final trial the young novices face to become disciples. If they succeed, it will prove the immense worth of their fitness regimen. Then the Arhat Hall can finally secure all the equipment they desire. That year, Mujin hits puberty, grows 10 centimeters, and lifts 400 kilograms. He does this for 12 reps, while that progress seems slow to some. Mujin is not trying to be a bodybuilder, he is a martial artist. Having overly bulky muscles would only slow down his agile combat movements. So he builds just enough mass, carving out a perfectly lean physique. His body is shredded, looking like a top-tier celebrity in peak shape. No longer resembling his past life as trainer Cho Kang-hyuk, he is defined. Like a legendary, chiseled warrior, soon, Hyun Song decides to venture out. Leaving the Arhat Hall, he meets with the esteemed abbot Hyun Chun. He reports that the big disciple admission test is in 5 days. The abbot welcomes him, noting he already heard the exciting news. Hyun Song humbly attributes this historic success entirely to Mujin. The abbot projects profound virtue, asking if Hyun Sung is feeling quite confident. Hyun Sung confirms he has his reasons, then steps forward to bow. He bows, stating his humble belief that this test will be very different. Different from all others, it was the abbot Hayanchin. High-ranking members from all halls gather at the Arhat Hall for the test. Thanks to Mujin's hard work, 49 eager children arrive for the test. With 42 remaining after some leave, everyone gathers to witness the result. They want to see this incredible result, and Hyun-sung agrees with another master, saying they shouldn't keep such an amazing result entirely to themselves. A nearby monk questions if this high number is due to Hyun-sung's kindness. But Hyjul disagrees, the chief has other thoughts. Hyjul explains that the master himself called this batch exceptionally skilled. He simply invites the monk to look and see the truth for himself. The other monk is stunned by the physical shape of the young kids. He notes that by their appearance, they look like second-generation disciples. And Hyjul confirms this, noting that it proves their extreme potential. Just watch, Hyun-sung stands before them all, fully confident. He thanks the high-ranking members for taking time out of their schedules, announcing that they will begin immediately to keep things brief for everyone. Mujin tells Mugong not to be afraid and warns Mujiang against being nervous. He looks at Muil, no, let it go, he turns back. Have fun, he says. Suddenly, a novice runs forward. Future masters from every hall watch carefully, ready to pick their disciples. They will select a child as a third-generation disciple during this event. Usually, second-generation disciples challenge the novices to gauge their skills. Then a shock, this young boy easily exchanges 20 blows. He still seems incredibly strong, prompting the abbot to praise their level. But Hyun-sung replies that they haven't even seen half of it yet. He asks the abbot to wait and see more before making judgments. Zero anxiety, Hyun-sung has complete trust in these boys. The bell rings, it's Muil's turn, and Mujin runs over. He asks if Muil remembers his advice to just go out and relax. He smiles, Muil is relaxed, ready to have fun. Stepping out into the courtyard, he confidently announces that he is ready. The challenge begins. Muil strikes first with massive force. His opponent observes, realizing just how many forms Muil has already mastered. Recognizing his talent, the senior prepared for the next phase of battle. He decides to test how well Muil can adjust his physical techniques. An opening, the boy charges forward with incredible speed. A quick spin, a counter, but Muil easily dodges. Launching a swift counter, Muil forces the older monk to block in disbelief. The senior wonders how a novice is this fast, preparing a hard punch. A finish blow, but the boy deftly ducks under. Masters watching from the veranda gasp in surprise at his swift movement. They praise his incredible animal-like instinct and speed on the battlefield. He adapts to these deep instincts with unbelievable flexibility and fluid form. Then Hegel tells his disciple Bopian to watch closely, declaring that this very boy will become his next disciple under his guidance, easily mastering all 5 Shaolin fists. When the duel ends, Mujin notes that Mual's incredible flexibility is a spectacular skill. He recalls pushing Mual to practice switching smoothly from one complex form to another without disrupting the flow. Because of this, every movement and inner energy flow became pure muscle memory. Muscle memory, the astonished abbot asks Hyenong how he trained these kids to such a level, and Hyenong replies that the abbot has not seen anything yet. Mujin steps up and tells Mugong to stay calm and not get nervous. The boy readies himself for battle while loudly denying any stage fright. On the veranda, masters wonder if this kid is truly just a beginner, his opponent a second generation. Disciple stares in utter disbelief at Mugong's towering height. Mugong thinks back on the 2 years of grueling, relentless training leading up to this exact day. The match starts and he charges. Meanwhile, Mujin asks Mujin how he thinks Mugong will do. Mujin explains that despite having raw power, the boy lacked flexibility, but insane hard work helped him conquer that weakness. This specialized training turned Mugong into an absolute powerhouse, and he strikes his target. The senior disciple is sent flying backward from the collision, realizes he cannot withstand such pure, crushing force with normal defense. He resolves to release a massive blast of energy to test the kid. Focusing all his strength into one fist, he drives a direct counterattack straight into Mugong's chest. The veteran monk unleashes a devastating blow, but the young fighter prepares to evade. Up on the veranda, the surprised masters watch the duel. One monk notes that this kid is not just incredibly strong, but also throws clever feints, fighting on completely equal footing with a senior. Then, Master Haidam walks over to the other disciples and remarks that it is highly impressive. They bow respectfully, asking if the young boy caught his eye. Haidam notes that the child works hard to eliminate wasted movement, showing immense dedication. He believes that with this level of skill, the young monk could easily become the ultimate standard bearer of Shaolin, knowing that all eyes are on him. Mugong prepares to show off, but he gets careless for a split second and takes a brutal punch straight to the gut. On the veranda, Master Haidam and the disciples watch in quiet disappointment. One elder notes the boy still relies on flashy moves, and Haidam agrees that the youngster has much to learn. Once the match ends, Mujin comforts Mugong, telling him not to get discouraged because everyone makes mistakes. Soon, Mujin is called up. Mujin watches his friend with a highly intense look. Mujin prepares for a fight that is far more dangerous than Mual's or Mugong's. He attacks his opponent with an endless combination of martial arts techniques. The bewildered senior monk wonders how many moves the kid has mastered, seemingly knowing every stance in existence. Mujin observes intently, silently rooting for his companion to keep up this pace. Beyond tiny slip-up early on, the fight looks great, but a critical problem soon starts to surface. As the match drags on, Mujin begins to get completely swept up in the raw combat. A master announces that the evaluation is over, yet the boy ignores the command and keeps striking. He clenches his fist, marveling at the strange, sudden rush of joy. He surrenders entirely to the thrill of combat. Standing nearby, Mujin recognizes the berserker rage consuming his friend as a bloodthirsty aura explodes from Mujin. Mujin screams at him to wake up. Meanwhile, up on a roof, mysterious man sips from a gourd. He jokes that all the racket sounded like the abbot was hosting a wild party, but figures it's just the admission exam. He watches a nimble young monk slip past a massive opponent, thinking the giant would fit perfectly under Haidam. Then his gaze shifts to a smiling monk blocking a heavy strike with absolute ease, instantly sparking his interest. The rooftop observer grins with excitement, declaring that this kid is the chosen one. Making up his mind, he leaps down straight into the courtyard, claiming the fighter for himself. Down below, A young monk is slammed hard against the stone. His attacker readies a devastating move. The 18 hands of Dharma technique. High on the balcony, the abbot and other elders watch the clash unfold. The massive strike crashes down, triggering a deafening shockwave. But a sudden hand catches the attacker's arm mid-strike. The mysterious warrior from the roof has stepped right between them, easily blocking the colossal brute. While calmly drinking, a nearby monk gasps, recognizing him as brother. Hyeguin and the newcomer just nods. From the balcony, Haydam barks a reprimand for bringing alcohol inside the sacred temple grounds. Hyeguin casually tosses the gourd up and tells brother Haydam to stop ruining the fun. Haydam catches it. Finding only water inside, he clears his throat and continues lecturing that while they value dedication, some boundaries must never be crossed. Hyeguin ignores him, turning to the crowd to announce that he wants to take this boy as his disciple. Up on the balcony, an elder whispers that the kid is undeniably talented, but notes that someone must teach him to suppress his terrifying bloodlust. Proposing Hyeguin, the fearsome captain of the Death Demon Brigade, this lethal squad is the sole unit in Shaolin exempt from the sacred vow against killing, formed to shield innocent people from dark forces. The abbot nods in agreement. Perhaps under Hyeguin's harsh guidance, the wild youth will finally learn to master his dangerous urges. Hyeguin approaches Mujin, patting his head and welcoming him to the squad. The furious young monk flinches at the touch, which only amuses his new master. Hyeguin chuckles, happy to have finally found a disciple even wilder than himself. Having chosen Mujin, he casually leaps back over the high wall, completely losing interest in the remaining matches. Talk about a dramatic exit. Utterly bewildered, however, the heavy tension slowly fades and the tournament resumes. The elite disciple testing, the recruits looks around, wondering who his next opponent will be. Suddenly, the novice Mujin is called forward. Mugong, the elite examiner, sizes up his challenger. Though Mujin looks rather plain, he clearly possesses the solid, dense frame of a pure power-type brawler. Up on the balcony, an elder tells the abbot that if he had to name the ultimate recruit, he would pick that boy without any hesitation. The abbot asks. Explaining his choice, the master notes Mujin might eventually master every single Shaolin art. But Mujin is different. The kid can elevate Shaolin to new heights. He prepares for battle, but first, let us revisit a crucial memory from his training. Byupgang spots young Mujin sitting in deep meditation and calls out to his student. He struggled with a few moves, so he stopped to clear his mind. But Byupgang asks him about the skills the boy has already mastered. Mujin explains he is actually trying to fix a major issue with his cultivation. This makes the master wonder if the kid reached a breakthrough in the path of emptiness. Not yet, Mujin says. His energy behaves wildly during certain moments. Curiously, Byupgang asks exactly when this struggle with his Kai occurs. The young monk admits it happens whenever he goes to sleep or stops breathing. Quite confused, Byupgang asks how that could possibly be an issue. Mujin points out that everyone stops breathing during many common daily actions. Like when eating or drinking. Suddenly, the old master gets it. The kid wants to know how to accumulate Kai during those exact moments. Crossing his arms, Byupgang mutters that geniuses are truly a bizarre breed. He never considered such a concept. Then, a brilliant idea suddenly sparks. He turns to ask if Mujin has ever heard of the iron shirt technique. Mujin immediately scoffs, a low-tier skill only used by common bandits. But Byupgang explains it was once a legendary, foundational method of Shaolin. Designed to harden the body, the technique eventually faded into obscurity. Top-tier masters easily bypassed it. But Byupgang reveals the world only understands half of the real truth. Most people think it just hardens the skin, but they are entirely wrong. The real technique actually absorbs pure Kai directly through the skin. As Mujin reels from this shock, Byupgang explains the cheap version was a mistake, created by an ancient disciple who never truly finished learning the secret art. If he can master this, he can literally absorb energy 24/7. Imagine doing that while eating, sleeping, or combining it with his other training. The potential growth is absolutely mind-blowing. Honestly, his mind is on another level. Realizing the hard skin is just a side effect, he initially thinks it is pointless. But then he pauses, a brilliant spark of inspiration hitting him out of nowhere. He wants to combine ancient Shaolin arts with modern gymnastics. Clenching his fist, he smiles as a wild theory starts to make sense. This forgotten training might actually be his ultimate ticket to absolute power. Normally, a disciple needs to master 3 specific martial arts to advance. But Mujin already maxed out all of them to the 10th level. He learned so quickly that he literally ran out of things to study here. While gymnastics helped plug some gaps, he ultimately needs to forge his own style. Watching his brilliant student closely, Byapgang knows this kid is destined for greatness. Shaking off his deep thoughts, Mujin looks straight at his respected teacher. With burning excitement, he begs the master to teach him the iron shirt. Back in the present, Mayel watches Mujin in the courtyard with deep curiosity. Mujiang sighs and notes that the bizarre genius has always been this way. He agrees that this is completely normal. The young monk strikes himself to understand the impact and condition his iron shirt technique. Next, he concentrates deeply on how to make the absorbed chi work in his favor, leaving his opponent shocked by a novice's massive energy. Mujin combines his cultivated chi and channels it in his own way. He announces that it is time to showcase his new martial arts combination. The abbot reflects that taking Shaolin to the next level is legendary. Such praise is normally reserved for others. Meanwhile, in the distance, a pair of travelers has finally arrived at the legendary Arhat Hall. The master apologizes for rushing to see the test, but Bopjin smiles. He says carrying his master only turned the trip into a nice stroll. The elder spots them and calls for the two to come closer. But Bopjin quickly warns him that they won't see much from this distance. Noting that Bopjin is far too young to judge, the master tells him to just watch closely and decide for himself. They join the crowd, watching as Mujin is called to step forward. Admiring the young man's perfect posture, he wonders about his cultivation. Mugong readies himself. As the duel begins, Mujin surges forward. He closes the distance in a flash, shocking Mugong with explosive speed. The defender wonders what kind of high-level footwork this kid knows. Mujin combines the 9 palace steps with the deadly Guan Yin palm. Mugong sees a heart center fist flying straight at him and braces. He readies his stance, but Mujin is already layering his styles. Combining the autumn wind leg with the palm strike, he roots himself. To maximize the impact, Mujin unleashes the first form of the chain-link fist. It channels maximum force through his shoulders, blending every martial art. The massive collision forces Mugong back, exposing a totally hybrid style. Without letting up, Mujin presses forward to launch his next strike. Mugong stares at his hands, having never felt such pressure in 10 long years. Bracing himself, he watches the incoming flurry of blows. He slips to the side to dodge, but the attack is a feint. Mujin catches him off guard with a sudden, precise finger strike. He follows up with a heavy punch, which Mugong barely intercepts. But the sheer power of Mujin's grip shocks him to the core. Instantly, Mujin unleashes a relentless barrage of heavy physical strikes. Watching them, the master wonders how a novice can wield such force. He is only using basic punches, kicks, and finger techniques. His moves are fundamentally simple, yet he completely dominates the field. By seamlessly linking basic movements, he is utterly overpowering Mugong. The master realizes Mujin isn't just jumping to higher skills. He is combining basic arts to create something that is completely unique. He realizes this boy is treading the path of a true grandmaster. Turning to Bopjin, he asks his disciple to help him up. He wants to be taken directly to the center of the field. Mujin smiles, excited to finally make his mark in the Murim. He remembers hiding his strength during training. Now, he can finally unleash it. He can finally test his full strength in a true challenge without holding anything back. Facing someone strong brings tension, but also excitement. He loves putting his training to the test as his senses sharpen. The world slows down around him, but then he sees his opponent backing away. Why are they backing off? Confused, Mujin turns around. Suddenly, the crowd parts like the Red Sea. Byopkian walks through carrying the old master, while the abbot watches from above. Elder Hayedam gasps. They both leap down immediately. They greet Master Hyung Wang, bowing deeply. Seeing all the disciples bow leaves Mujin wondering who this old man is. Hyung Wang apologizes for interrupting, but the abbot quickly dismisses it. There must be a good reason. The old master steps forward. Master Hyung Wang explains he only came to ask this kid a question. His request, take off your clothes. Mujin complies. He has nothing to hide. He strips down. His physique is absolutely insane. His muscles are built perfectly for martial arts. The master studies him closely. He asks if Mujin used special training for the 6 basic forms. Mujin is stunned. How did he know? With so many advanced techniques, why choose such simple foundation forms? Simple, he felt he was not a genius. So he simply picked the best movements and combined them. He was never the story's original, super talented protagonist. He lacked Mujiang's natural ease with advanced techniques. He chose to build a hybrid instead. It is highly effective. He only needs to channel Kai inside his body correctly. He focused on making his muscles strong enough to endure the energy. The old master watches, recognizing the sheer discipline behind this young monk's power. He notices hints of the autumn wind step, refined through hard training. He praises the child's control of such overwhelming force. He literally forged his own martial art. Mujin is stunned. The old master wants him as Byopkian's disciple. The abbot is shocked. Will he take him as a 3rd-generation monk? Night falls. Mujin is still spinning from all the chaos. Meanwhile, inside the hall, Mugong is incredibly confused. He keeps asking himself what is so special about that guy. The strange master did not look healthy, let alone like a martial artist. His name was never mentioned in the original story's universe either. Just then, the abbot enters the room, and Mugong asks him about the master. He asks if he knows Master Hyung Wang, but the abbot says no. Later, the abbot calls Mujin in. There are some crucial things the boy must know about his brand new master. He begins to reveal the truth about the venerable Hyung Wang. Long ago, this master was known as the greatest warrior alive. The abbot looks back to when their generation was just starting out. Even among 2nd-generation disciples, Master Hyung Wang was an unbelievable prodigy. At just 32 years old, he was on the absolute verge of surpassing his seniors. Everyone predicted he would soon rule the martial world. So Mujin asks how such an absolute monster ended up completely broken. With a heavy sigh, the abbot reveals it was all due to the demonic cult. Hearing about the demonic cult, the young man reacts with pure shock. He recounts the dark era when their peace was suddenly shattered. Peace reigned then without warning. The vicious cult launched their attack. To protect all living things, the righteous Shaolin monks immediately marched into battle. But war is a brutal grinder, and tragedies always follow on the front lines. Deemed too precious to lose, Master Hyung Wang was barred from fighting. Instead, the senior masters and the 1st-generation disciples departed for the front lines. Knowing Shaolin's main force was deployed elsewhere, the enemy made their move. Vicious elite squads from the cult marched straight toward the temple. Only the master and the young, defenseless disciples remained on the mountain. But even alone, the master was already one of the greatest on earth. Those skilled invaders stood zero chance against him in direct combat. However, the young disciples were completely defenseless. They stood absolutely no chance. With no way to fight back, they were easily cut down. And here is where the story takes an incredibly dark turn. As the battle raged, the invaders suddenly targeted the defenseless children. Realizing the danger, Master Hyangwang immediately spins around to save them. He leaps across the temple grounds, desperately trying to shield them. Taking a devastating blow, a bloodied Hyangwang stands in front of his disciples, vowing that not a single invader will leave the temple alive. He throws his broken body into the blades, fighting to save them. With every single clash, his body takes deep, irreversible damage. The abbot laments, wishing the children had died instead to spare him. Mujin asks if these battlefield wounds are what left the master crippled. Nodding slowly, the abbot sadly confirms those wounds are indeed the tragic cause. But Mujin smiles, declaring that they just need to heal him. Stunned, the abbot asks if the boy truly thinks he can succeed. Another master scoffs, pointing out that even legendary elixirs failed completely. Mujin quickly clarifies that restoring the master's peak martial arts is impossible. However, he is confident he can at least make the man walk again. Master Hyansong speaks up, recalling how Mujin helped another injured brother. He mentions that Mujin probably knows about Brother Bayup Gang's knee issues. Curious, the abbot asks if this same bizarre treatment could work here. Hyansong nods, fully believing in the young man's strange training methods. The physical therapy had completely repaired those shattered joints in no time. Still skeptical, the abbot asks if all these wild claims are true. Hyansong confirms that today's brutal admission test proved it undeniably. But can this training truly piece a broken body back together? Mujin honestly admits his simple exercises alone will not be enough. To pull off this miracle, he is going to need a few specific things. The abbot slams his hand onto the table, declaring himself leader. Shaolin will do absolutely anything to save the master. Every Murim fighter trains bone and muscle. Factions constantly fight for control. They tried absolutely everything to achieve this, starting with basic methods, like acupuncture and tonics, up to breaking a child's bones. Shaolin failed repeatedly, and Hyang Wang's body got worse by the day. True recovery takes years, but Mujin has a shortcut. Healing bones takes forever, but the admission test changed everything. Mujin's methods actually worked. The abbot saw it himself. With his own eyes, he saw that this child could heal Master Hyang Wang. The abbot makes his choice. If they need more divine elixir, he will gladly sacrifice his own body. That is his vow. He vows to sever his own arm, just like the legendary Haga before him. But Mujin does not want that. He asks a completely different question. Are there techniques in Shaolin using Thunder Qi and Supreme Yang Qi? The abbot and Master Hyansong exchange confused glances at this. The temple leader confirms they exist, but demands to know his reasons. Soon, Mujin is invited into a private room with the masters. Hyang Gong, the fierce disciplinary head, is waiting right there. Brother Haydam is there too, possessing the diamond body. Mujin enters and quickly bows, having been fully briefed on the way. He quickly realizes that Hyang Gong is Bayup Gang's master. The masters step forward, willing to do absolutely anything to help. They will do anything to save Hyang Wang. Mujin slowly rolls up his sleeve. Mujin rolls up his sleeve, preparing a highly bizarre request. He asks them to strike him with their weakest divine thunder palm. Hyang Gong is baffled. Why ask for something so reckless? Mujin quickly explains he only needs a tiny amount of heat. He does not need a massive surge of thunder energy to burn. Just a tiny, controlled flow. Hyang Gong steps forward to try. Touching Mujin's arm, he channels a microscopic current of his signature thunder technique. He asks how it felt. Are they trying to electrocute the master? Mujin rubs his arm. Even that tiny shock was too strong. He warns the fragile old master, cannot survive that sheer power. They must cut the strength of that divine strike by more than half. Hyung Gong takes this as a direct challenge to his absolute control. Mujin tries to warn him, but the hot-headed elder snaps back. The fiery master loudly interrupts him, screaming that he can do it. But treating the master requires advanced physical therapy equipment that doesn't exist in this world. Master Hyung Wang is too weak, so Mujin must build a makeshift machine. He watches closely as the elder channels an incredibly tiny spark. That minimal flow is absolutely perfect for what Mujin has planned. He is trying to build a therapy machine from back home. Specifically, an electrical muscle stimulator. Hyung Gong is highly skeptical. He asks if they are really putting raw lightning directly into muscles. Mujin nods. It is true, he explains, sending a gentle charge of thunder kai straight into the muscles, jumpstarts blood circulation and activity, boosting muscle contraction and growth, but Yang Gong doubts simply letting the energy flow like that can actually yield results, questioning how long this therapy takes. Hayedam steps in, saying he must examine Master Hyung Wang in person first. Though initial changes should start showing within about a month. Meanwhile, Mujin gets ready to break down exactly what Hayedam needs to do. He explains that just like before, they will need the power of Supreme. Yangi and Hayedam readily agrees to assist if his arts can truly help. Suddenly, the master thrusts his palm forward with absolute maximum force toward Mujin. Mujin staggers back from the pure pressure, shouting that he cannot do it like that. He quickly tells him to avoid extending his arm, urging a much softer touch. Demonstrating, Mujin shows that using the raw power of the Supreme. Yangi only requires pointing the palm gently, like the warm sun hovering above. Rather than blasting the energy out, he instructs that it needs to just flow out as a soft, steady warmth from the hand, once adjusted. Mujin carefully checks the temperature, declaring that it is absolutely perfect. He uses an analogy, explaining that while Hyung Wang provides electrical stimulation, Hayedam has a totally different part to play in this treatment. Serving as a human infrared lamp, Hayedam must keep this flow going for about 30 minutes. This deep heat will warm the skin, soothe tired muscles, boost general circulation, and completely cleanse both muscles and sore joints. Suddenly, Hayedam cuts him off, asking if this nonsense will actually work. Mujin looks up, asking him to clarify, and the master presses him on whether these strange methods can truly heal their revered grandmaster. He acknowledges Mujin's impressive feats with the Bayup gang and the Arhat Hall, but insists their leader's critical condition is on a completely different level. How can they trust some bizarre therapy only this kid has heard of? Mujin understands their heavy skepticism, but he knows his own expertise and genuinely wants to help. You see, back in his past life as Ganguk Choi, he was far more than a trainer. He was a certified physical therapist. He had mastered yoga, heavy weightlifting, and all sorts of other fitness systems, pushing his knowledge straight into complex nutrition and healthy diets. This obsessive study was driven by his own crippling injury, which he successfully cured, transforming his entire life. A brief flashback shows a younger Ganguk Choi studying endlessly for his hard-earned license. Armed with master-level knowledge in training, diet, Pilates, and advanced rehab, he is uniquely qualified, if there is a single soul in this fantasy era capable of properly diagnosing and healing Hyung Wang, it is without a doubt. Mujin, snapping back to the present, he speaks up, admitting he was deeply shocked by just how severe the Grandmaster's physical state truly is right now. He declares he knows these healing techniques and will do whatever it takes to save him, but will happily step aside if they refuse to trust his methods. The listening masters realize that every traditional method has failed, leaving them hopeless. Yet this young man offers a completely fresh, logic-driven approach to healing. If these strange methods can actually save their grandmaster, they must take the chance. Hai Dam cannot discard this hope without reason. Will it take about a month? Mujin confirms with a nod they will follow his strict instructions for that period. But the master warns, if there is no physical improvement, Mujin will face severe punishment for crimes against the temple elders. The young man calmly accepts. Honestly, this kid has some serious nerve. He notes this challenge simply means they must perfect their daily healing techniques. Inviting them to try again, Hai Dam realizes the boy might be right. And his focused gestures do not seem hollow. Soon, the session finishes. The abbot dismisses Mujin so he can rest up for the next day. The abbot asks for their thoughts. Hyong-gong admits it was quite difficult to release such a controlled, weak flow of energy. He tells Hai Dam this delicate approach could actually be useful outside of their medical treatments. The abbot explains that their supreme yang energy works like martial arts, helping to govern and stabilize a person's inner spirit and temperament. Masters of secret yin techniques are cold, while yang masters are highly impetuous. Shaolin martial arts utilize powerful yang energy to aggressively combat evil forces. But this only succeeds when the fire and metal elements harmonize perfectly. Mujin did not intend to use the explosive, destructive power of qi. Instead, he focused on a weak and constant flow to cultivate deep, pure peace. Hai Dam admits that once power reaches their level, it easily runs wild. He never realized he could guide his energy internally to temper his spirit. Soon, he heads back to his quarters to put this theory into practice. Hyong-gong decides to do the same, while the abbot observes thoughtfully. Once perfected, this technique could help disciples who struggle with volatile fire energy. The next day, Bupgang stands outside the pavilion of Elder Hyong-woong. He greets the arriving masters, asking what brings them to this place. Hyang-chin steps forward to explain that they came regarding their sick master. He believes Mujin might hold the key to finally curing the elder's illness. Lying helpless in his bed, Hyong-woong is shocked to hear Mujin's name. Hyang-chin already told them everything about Mujin's great feats. He explained everything that transpired during the intense trials at the Arhat Hall. Now Mujin steps forward, calmly declaring that he must examine the patient first. After a quick physical analysis, the trainer realizes the damage is incredibly severe. He asks immediately, how long has the elder been completely bedridden? Looking down, he notices there are barely any calf muscles left to work with. Mujin gently requests that the elder warn him if the pain becomes unbearable. He places his hands on the elder's back, applying targeted, firm pressure. As the old man silently endures, Mujin continues the deep tissue muscle therapy. He wonders if everyone in Shaolin is a masochist, first Bupgang, now him. Neither of them ever admits to feeling pain. He prepares the next step. First, he warms the tight back with a steaming, damp hot towel. Then the real physical therapy begins as he stretches out the stiff limbs. He gently rotates the ankles and legs to release decades of built-up tension. But the elder's body feels like an ancient, fragile vase ready to crack. One wrong move could shatter it, requiring absolute sharp focus from Mujin. True concentration. Still, Mujin refused to show how exhausting it was. After an hour of total focus, the others are completely stunned by him. They can't believe his dedication, his focus locked onto the treatment. But suddenly, a quiet despair begins to cloud Mujin's eyes. Deep in his eyes, a memory of his grandfather walking away appears. Hand in hand with a child, the boy calls out for his grandfather. He promised to find a cure no matter what. Beside him, Hyang Wang lies silent. Still resting in bed, the master watches Mujin and begins to wonder. What troubles this young disciple so much? Looking closer, he sees it. A deep sadness is written all over his face. Mujin finally sighs. Standing up, he announces he has finished his part of the treatment. Now it is the master's turn, just like they practiced last night. The infrared and electrical therapies proceed without any issues. Afterward, Mujin packs up his things to move. He moves from Arhat Hall straight into Hyang Wang's quarters. Settling in, he is glad to escape those sweaty, bald men. But he soon realizes he must share a room to watch over Hyung Wang. So much for a private room, but he really needs sleep. He can't stop thinking about how terrible the master's condition is. Wait, has the old man seriously suffered through this pain for years? The situation reminds him of his own grandfather, making him miss him deeply. In a memory, a young Gang Yuk massages his grandfather's leg. Asking if he feels better, his grandfather replies that he has a magic touch. Reassuring the old man, he tells him it will not hurt anymore. He tells him to relax, vowing to study hard to find a cure. He will learn to relieve his pain. Smiling proudly, his grandfather encourages him. Telling him to study hard, he cannot wait to see his grandson's future. In another memory, Gang Yuk supports his grandfather as they walk together. He guides him past an intravenous stand in the hospital. The scene shifts. Incense burns slowly on a funeral altar. During the service, the young man cries in his grandmother's arms. He laments that he never did enough. He could only offer simple massages, doing nothing else to help him. He blames himself, calling himself useless. Later, his grandmother asks a question. Asking which college he will attend, Gang Yuk replies he is not interested. He would rather do something else. Instead, he focuses on his books. All his studies focus on physical therapy and training for the elderly. He stops in front of a military recruitment poster and smiles. Thinking he might join the special forces, soon he is in uniform. Gang Yuk proudly tells his grandmother he finally got a stable job. Holding her hands, he promises to take care of her now. Doing exactly what grandfather wanted. Later, his grandmother is left alone. Asking over the phone if he is visiting, she only hears excuses. He is always training, even on jungle missions, he repeats his vow. He will do what his grandfather wanted. With that, he raises his weapon. He clenches his fist, determined to protect his grandmother. Wearing a mask, he hides his face. He stays focused while thinking of her. Days before his promotion, a call arrives. An officer approaches, calling out for Lieutenant Choi Gang. He receives devastating news. Soon, he stands before his grandmother's memorial. A colleague laments the tragic situation, saying they can do absolutely nothing. Explaining the strict protocol, the officer says they can only grant 3 days of leave. He must fulfill his duties, even if she was not his mother. He must return immediately because a top-secret mission is waiting for him. Back on the field, he pushes forward through the dense, shadowy forest. The squad climbs the steep slope. Suddenly, his foot slips and he loses his footing. He tumbles down. In his mind, the young soldier sits before his grandparents. He asks his grandfather if he is feeling any better now. Then he asks if it is too late to give him another soothing massage. He deeply regrets not doing more for them while they were still alive. His grandfather gently caresses him, praising the young boy's incredible and comforting touch. Tears stream down Mujin's face as he laughs softly in his deep sleep. Walking inside, Bayapon finds them. Hyangguang watches over Mujin, who quietly mumbles that he is not crying. The young disciple asks the master what they should do next. Hyangguang keeps his gaze fixed on the sleeping boy, who lies on his back. Mujin murmurs that he misses them, begging to be left in peace. Hyangguang says the boy is currently struggling with his own heart. He realizes this is why the young man is so determined to treat him. He offers a gentle prayer, wishing that Buddha will always protect the boy. He warmly tells Mujin to call him grandpa instead of master from now on. Wiping his eyes in sheer surprise, Mujin wonders if he heard that correctly. Completely baffled by the old man's words, he asks if he is feeling sick. Though he finds the sudden kindness strange, he decides to follow the order. Scratching his head, he awkwardly agrees to call him grandpa. Immediately, the other masters reprimand him, asking how he dares address the venerable elder that way. But the young man simply explains that it was a direct order. Laughing warmly, Hyangguang waves it off, much to the annoyance of the others. He gladly tells them that the young man has his absolute permission. He admits it has been a very long time since he had this much fun. Mujin silently watches the chaos before asking to resume the master's treatment. The request catches them off guard, but it also eases the tension. One of the masters suddenly announces that the time has come to act. He orders that Mujin's hair must be cut, shocking the young boy. Heinchin explains that even though his hair is short, it still needs trimming. Hedam points out they have kept Mujin far too busy with other tasks. They will handle the treatment while Mujin goes. Soon, he is rummaging through documents. He desperately searches the archives for a document that is not there. Screaming in pure frustration, he complains about his inability to find a loophole. He desperately needs any historical precedent to protect himself from the haircut. He searches for any excuse to save his hair, but finds nothing. All the effort he put into growing out his hair. In a memory, he asks a master why monks gather. They keep their hair short, learning that it symbolizes cutting ties with the secular world. The master explains that each snip serves as a reminder of the path to enlightenment, but Mujin wonders if it is merely a symbolic gesture. Confirming this, the master explains that Bodhidharma and Buddha himself did the same just like them. Finally, he says it is the very first step to escape suffering, an admirable tradition, but back in the present, Mujin dismisses the tradition as too rigorous and continues his search. Collapsing, he grumbles that he never even wanted to go to Shaolin, having merely fallen asleep reading a novel before waking up here. Suddenly, he stops and, how on earth did he even end up in this crazy world? Trying to remember, he goes through the hospital, the gym, a live broadcast, and finally reading that Shaolin novel before sleeping, and then, boom, that hospital memory stands out in his mind. Diagnosed with stress-induced baldness, the doctor warned him. He might lose everything, total baldness. Grabbing his head in despair, he reacts to the memory. Distraught, he runs off, feeling even more embarrassed because, on top of the doctor's warning, he has to shave everything off now. Then he remembers, the master explained that cutting hair symbolizes cutting ties with the secular world, but he realizes that severing connections with society does not necessarily have to be about hair. Smiling, he realizes he needs something no one from this era would ever do. Concluding, he knows he just needs to prove he has cut ties with the normal world. And he dashes out. Fast forward to the next day. Everything seems peaceful at the temple. Entering the room with a box in his hands, Bobby announces that training is back. Yanchin speaks up, asking if the scissors and razor were not delivered yet, and the disciple confirms they were, turning to Mujin, the master. Then asks why his hair is not cut, but Mujin calmly says he did cut his hair. The abbot is completely shocked. How is that a haircut? Mujin recalls the teaching. Shaving hair means cutting ties with the outside world, and he felt this style was a better way to do it. He argues, no one would look at this haircut and think I am still connected to the normal world. Furthermore, he explains that he shaved the Buddhist symbol on the side to honor him in his own way, proudly asking if the concept is not admirable, despite it being just a modern cut. Remaining totally impassive, Heian and Bopjian are not impressed by this justification. Laughing, Yongwang thinks the idea is brilliant, stating that the meaning is far more important than the rules. At that moment, Hegel arrives at the door and asks for permission to enter. Entering, he immediately demands to know what strange hair that is, remembering he was sent to cut it. Explaining himself, Mujin says that to cut ties with the world and honor Buddha, he decided this hairstyle was the best and that his grandfather also approved. Reprimanding him, Hegel states that hair is a symbol of worldly desire and cutting it represents the path to enlightenment. With complete innocence, Mujin replies that is exactly why he cut it. The master retorts, arguing that the remaining hair still symbolizes attachment to the world. Retorting, Mujin says that from what he understands, Buddha originally did not It is not about just cutting hair. Turning to the shocked masters, he asks, if the reason is to show we must face the pain of others to help them, then should all body hair be shaved off? Hearing this, Haiyan Chun and Haiyan Quang stare intently at their own beards. Smiling mischievously, Mujin asks if they all shave their faces as well. He then explains that the portraits portray their founder Bodhidharma with only the top of his head shaved while keeping the rest. Looking at the founder's image, he concludes that what truly matters is severing connections with the secular world, not the actual hairstyle. Reflecting, the masters consider his words, remembering that Bodhidharma indeed shaved only the top of his head. Thinking it over, they realize that Mujin did shave most of his head, etched a Buddhist symbol, and that the cut would never be accepted in the secular world. Turning to Haiyan Gong, Haiyan Quang asks for his opinion, teasingly asking if he intends to shave his beard. Embarrassed, Haiyan Gong gives in, muttering that if his hair stays like that, they can allow it. Thanking him with a smile, Mujin receives his permission. Since Haiyan Gong would never part with his beard, the style is approved. With Haiyan Quang's treatment wrapped up, training begins early the next morning. Stepping forward, surrounded by the other disciples, Bayup Gang confronts Mujin and yells about what kind of hair that is. Answering cheerfully, Mujin says that Master Haiyan Gong personally authorized it. Bayup Gang is shocked. Highly suspicious, he questions if the elder actually allowed it. Finding it a miracle Mujin is even still alive. Accepting the final answer, Bayup Gang begrudgingly orders training to begin. With the approval of the notoriously strict Bayup Gang, the other disciples start to get wild ideas, and honestly, kids will be kids, even in a holy temple. Many of them worry about what others think, seeking attention. For them, Mujin's unique hairstyle is enough to spark a trend. Sneaking up from behind, Mu Gong calls to Mujin, whispering that he also wants to cut his hair, asking how he managed to pull it off. In response, Mujin says he can share his secret, but doubts he will be as lucky. Facing Master Hai Dam, Mu Gong tries to argue. Hair only symbolizes devotion to the Buddha. Declaring his resolve, he states that as long as he shows dedication to the path, there is no real need to shave his head completely. In tense silence, the masters stare at him as he awaits a reply. Calmly, Hai Dam calls for Bayup Yom, who steps forward immediately. Pinned by the monk, Mu Gong desperately protests as Hai Dam coldly declares that he will shave his head himself. Meanwhile, during the treatments, Mujin realizes that Haiyan Quang is in such terrible shape that his entire body needs immediate work. But doing it all at once is impossible, as it would severely overwork his aging frail body, so he devises a plan very similar to a modern fitness routine to split up the therapy, allowing different muscles to fully recover. One day focuses on the lower legs, the next on the thighs, then the waist, and finally a day for shoulders and arms, with Haiyan Gong and Hai Dam following along on schedule. Yet, since Mujin is not officially the temple doctor, but simply a young Shaolin disciple, he bids farewell to the old elder, calling him grandfather and promising he will return later. Smiling, Haiyan Quang wishes him well while Bayup Gang promises. Even so, Mujin still presents himself at the Arhat Hall every day outside of treatment hours. Inside the Arhat Hall master's quarters, it was announced that thanks to the abbot, those additional requested funds were finally granted. Naturally, Mujin wondered if this meant they could get all the training equipment they wanted. The master nodded, confirming that the administrative hall officially recognized his methods. In short, the Arhat Hall master declared that all physical training would now follow Mujin's new methods. Smiling, Mujin remembered when they called his routines weird. Now they were finally recognized, but then a massive realization hit him. He suddenly understood the catches. It meant a complete system overhaul. Slightly worried, he asked if he would have to teach everyone in the Arhat Hall. Did he really have to guide every single monk personally? The master chuckled, reassuring him that he only needed to train the second-level disciples on how to use the gear. Then, he handed over a thick stack of papers. Mujin stared, asking what all this was for. The master simply asked for his full attention, telling him to write down any additional gear he wanted with detailed explanations. With a massive grin, Mujin could barely contain his excitement. Finally, modern training was within reach, but he had another clever idea in mind. He asked if he could request gear for a different location and maybe order a little extra. Specifically, he clarified that he wanted to request some highly specialized gear. To help his grandfather, Master Yang Guang, the master worried that the intense exercises might overwhelm the old man, but Mujin explained this was purely therapeutic. Gear, it was a completely different beast. Still confused, the master listened carefully to Mujin's plans for Haiyang Wang. This grand plan involved the power of Pilates, though modern folks often label it as a women's workout. It actually started as rehab for wounded soldiers. In other words, it was exactly what Haiyang Wang needed. Agreeing, the master promised the administrative hall wouldn't deny this request, giving him full approval to begin, but as Mujin started drafting the Pilates blueprints, he suddenly stopped. Halfway, a major problem hit him. Could this stuff even be made? In this ancient era, modern Pilates gear uses foam rollers and stretchy resistance bands made of rubber or plastic, since absolutely none of that exists right now. Mujin designs clever alternatives using heavy springs and sturdy metal frames wrapped in thick leather. Realizing the price tag would be astronomical, he tossed the paper to the master and walked away, leaving the poor monk fearing total bankruptcy. 2 hours later, Mujin finally wraps up his long meeting with Hyansong. His buddies immediately call him over to eat, teasing that he is running pretty late today. Then Mugong gasps, asking what on earth happened to his hair. The boy's new look is a total shock. Preparing to explain, Mujin remembers that Mugong is now training under Master Hedam. Suddenly, another young monk starts weeping, sniffling that he just got some dirt in his eyes, while his friend tries comforting him. Mujin gently pulls Muil aside to ask how he has been doing, and the boy replies that he is mostly doing okay, but there is one giant problem. Whenever they train, Muil explains, his master does nothing but sigh loudly. To make matters worse, that master promised to pay them a visit today. He did not get it. Poor Muil was left completely in the dark. Meanwhile, Higal was elsewhere, sighing in deep frustration. He blamed himself, wondering if he made a huge mistake choosing this disciple. He thought he chose a genius. He was wrong. Muil was just too simple. Easily distracted, even a tiny ant could steal the boy's entire focus. Higal complained, teach him one thing, he forgets two. Teach two, he forgets 10. It was hopeless. At this rate, the 5 fists of Shaolin would face extinction. Gone forever, but then Muil spotted his master standing in the distance. Smiling brightly, the boy ran over and called out to him. Looking at him, Higal realized that bright smile was the boy's greatest weapon. Because of that pure face, he could never bring himself to scold him. He gently asked how Muil had trained during his novice days. The monk happily chirped that his good friend Mujin had helped him. He helped Mugong and Mujiang too. Higal was completely stunned. Wait, Mujin, that was the kid taken in by Elder Haiyang Wang. He had to know what secret method saved these hopeless disciples. Higal made up his mind, telling Muil they were going to meet Mujin. Muil happily agreed. In the cafeteria, the master approached their busy table. He introduced himself, leaving all the other young disciples frozen in pure shock. Seeing the master was wild, but Mujin calmly asked what he wanted. Higal explained that they needed to talk with Elder Haiyang Wang. Follow me, please accompany me to his quarters after you eat. Mujin agreed, but wondered why the master needed him there as well. Inside, Muil ran ahead to greet the elder, who smiled warmly. Mujin felt uneasy. Why was Higal staring so intensely at him? Did he do something wrong? Welcoming them, Haiyang Wang asked what brought them. Higal got straight to the point, explaining he had questions for Mujin. Stepping closer, he quietly whispered to Haiyang Wang about the boy's training. It was extremely tough, but he heard Mujin had helped him out before. Let us be honest, teaching a kid this distracted is a real nightmare. Even the basic Shaolin 5 fists completely eluded the boy without help. Intrigued, Haiyang Wang suggested they explain how they wanted to start. He requested a quick demonstration from Mujin, catching Higal off guard. He was shocked to hear the young disciple call the elder grandfather. The master asked if they could spar, and Mujin confirmed they did often. Grinning, Mujin told Muil they were just going to have some fun. Let's go outside, the excited young monk enthusiastically agreed. Higal was completely baffled. What did having fun have to do with training? Even outside, the master still did not understand their methods. Mugong stepped in, telling Muil to treat this as another game. The boy eagerly agreed. Watching with arms crossed, Master Higal remained skeptical. He still did not see how playing and practicing went together. Total silence, the three masters watched closely, waiting to see what happened. One of them noted that the truth would reveal itself very soon. Ready? Mugong asked, then suddenly dashed straight across the courtyard. Mugong leaps toward Muyal, shouting for them to play like the old days. This introduces the legendary martial art known as the 5 Shaolin fists. Invented by Bodhidharma, it was modeled after the movements of 5 animals. While typical Shaolin styles focus on strict restriction, this one is different. It focuses on releasing inner energy and finding absolute free expression. Instead of the traditional path to enlightenment, the practitioner carves their own. Because of this, the 5 fists always had a reputation for running wild. Haiguan is the absolute sole master of this style, feeling its heavy burden. He has a duty to keep it alive. Master Haiguang observes them closely. Haiguan rushed things, making the disciple ask why he did it. The master explains that Muyal is naturally built for the 5 fists. His movements are eccentric, unique, and incredibly creative during combat. Haiguan must be terrified of choosing the wrong heir for his style. This threatens the style's future. Mujin interrupts Mugong, telling him to stop. Mugong asks if that was fun, and Muyal eagerly agrees. The two bump fists, and Master Haiguang gives a new order. He tells Haiguan to take Mujin along, sharing the disciple's burdens. He wants Haiguan to teach Mujin the legendary 5 fists as well. He wants him to learn the exact same style, completely shocking Haiguan and Mugong. While Muyal celebrates training together, Haiguan strongly objects to the idea. He argues that the 5 fists oppose everything Shaolin stands for. But Master Haiguang reassures him, then turns his gaze toward young Mujin. He tells him to remember one crucial thing above all else. Visible forms do not matter, only the true meaning behind them. Mujin absorbs these deep words as Master Haiguang quietly walks away. Haiguan bows deeply, promising to do his best. The next day arrives. Mujin officially begins his intense training in the legendary 5 Shaolin fists. He finds himself back at the grounds, where Muyal greets him. They talk about training together again, and Mugong nods in agreement. Haiguan watches them, still wondering why the master assigned him Mujin. He grumbles, feeling like he now has 2 major headaches to handle. Mugong fully understands his teacher's sudden frustration and absolute confusion. However, he knows his grandfather always has a brilliant, hidden plan. Brushing it aside, now watch this, Haiguan loudly announces that the lesson is starting. He will teach both boys, and Mujin resolves to absorb everything. Haiguan begins teaching the ancient 5 fists, calling Mujin to watch. He tells them to pay close attention to this first form. They will start with the crane fist, and he calls Baepjin forward. He orders him to step up and demonstrate the movements properly. Baepjin tells Mujin to watch carefully, starting with basic breathing. Harnessing inner energy is vital. He closes his eyes to concentrate. Baepjin prepares himself, then unleashes a series of fluid movements. His hands trace graceful arcs, finishing the perfect display of power. Muyal is deeply impressed, but Mujin notices something far deeper. This style is entirely different from standard Shaolin forms, Baepjin explains. He explains that the style mimics a crane, forcing the entire body to move. Watching closely, Mugong sees Muyal twisting his body in a bizarre, unfamiliar way. Hijil smacks his forehead in utter frustration, prompting Mugong to ask what they should do. Mujin steps closer, realizing that Muyal possesses the perfect flexibility needed for this. He has the ultimate body control for the 5 fists, so what's the issue? Muyal admits that the crane fist form just feels incredibly strange to him. Moving that way feels totally awkward, and stopping the flow is even worse. Mujin is stunned. The kid knows the moves, but can't connect them together. Hijil explains that's exactly why he sought him out in the first place. After all, Muyo trained in this exact style when he was just a novice. But as Muyal fumbles around awkwardly, Mujin realizes there's no easy solution here. He starts questioning everything. Why on earth did his grandfather send him to this place? Surely there must be a hidden reason. Suddenly, a memory of Master Hyang Wang flashes back. The old master explains how he created his personal style just by combining basic moves. Mujin bows deeply, expressing his gratitude to the master for this demonstration. But the master warns him that pushing for too much raw power has its limits. Eventually, a cultivator's body simply won't be able to withstand that crushing force. See, Mujin's entire style relies on layering basic moves instead of learning advanced secrets. But as each simple technique builds on the last, the force becomes monstrous. So he constantly trained his physical body to endure the massive feedback. Yet, according to Hyang Wang, a physical vessel will eventually reach its absolute breaking point. The body fails, and his beloved fighting style will become totally useless. Mujin has to agree. His grandfather is right. There has to be a better way. Watching him closely, the master suggests a brand new path, learning the diamond fist. Instantly, Mujin is intrigued. This could be the breakthrough he desperately needs. He explains that like the small flood fist, this style is special. The diamond fist draws from the Diamond Sutra, holding the secrets to power control. As the master chants the ancient third verse, Mujin struggles to grasp the meaning. Sensing his confusion, the master looks at his disciple, knowing he is listening closely. Hyang Wang emphasizes that he must discover the profound truth behind each stance. You see, what matters isn't the physical form, but the unseen essence of it. Snapping back to the present, Mujin remembers those wise words about true meaning. He asks himself, what is the core essence of the crane fist? Then it hits him, the shape is meant to mimic the crane itself. Every single flow, block, and strike is built to mimic the elegant bird. The second he cracks the code, a wave of clarity washes over Mujin. He finally gets it, turning to Muyal. Mujin asks the boy if he has ever actually seen a real crane. Fumbling, Muyal blankly replies that he hasn't, wondering if a crane is some food. This style was meant to flow naturally, like water running down a stream. It makes absolutely zero sense for someone this flexible to struggle so much. Confused, Boeopian asks if the problem is just the movement being too awkward. Mujin quickly shakes his head, explaining that isn't the issue at all. The real issue is that Muyal has literally never laid eyes on a crane. He's just blindly copying shapes without understanding the soul behind the beast. He urges Boeopian to think about it. The moves themselves aren't the problem. They say animal movements are completely natural, but that is only true for that specific animal's body. What humans do is merely imitate these actions with their own bodies by learning the main forms and stances through training. Boeopian confirms that this is correct, but Mujin argues that Muyal only needs the basic structure first, then discover his own style. Skeptical, Boeopian listens as Mujin explains that Muyal cannot just copy standard crane postures. Instead, he must mimic the actual bird, leaving the masters deep in thought. Understanding at last, Hai Gull realizes why Master Hyun Wang sent the kid. Meanwhile, Mujin questions himself, wondering why he got so obsessed with rigid forms and standard movements when he never walked a traditional path. He realizes he was entrusted with Shaolin's most adaptable style, the Five Fists. He wonders when he lost sight of this fighting style's true, fluid spirit. Trapped in a narrow view of what Bodhidharma actually taught, agreeing Hai Gull concedes the point and decides they must show Mu Yul a real crane. Offering a solution, Bayab Hyan suggests hunting for one since they gather nearby. By the next day, they still have no idea how they will drag a wild bird into the temple, reaching the dusty training grounds. Mujin apologizes for his delay, caused by his grandfather's medical treatment. Halting at the entrance of the silent, empty courtyard, Mujin calls out for Master Hyul. Hearing nothing, he scans the area, shouting for Bayab Hyan and Mu Yul, wondering where they vanished. Stepping into the yard, he wonders if training was cancelled today for some weird reason. Suddenly, Mujin asks Mu Yul if he can guess what that is, but the boy just looks blank. About peeking around a corner, Mujin watches as Mu Yul gasps in sheer wonder. Standing in a small courtyard pond is a beautiful wild crane, Hai Gull. And the others marvel, exclaiming that cranes are truly incredible creatures. This creature's movements inspired the creation of their fighting style. Together, they demonstrate the crane fist, one of Shaolin's 5 fists. Walking in, Mujin asks if training started, and Mu Yul calls out to him. Turning around, the master and Bayab Hyan whisper his name, leaving Mujin baffled. Then, they suddenly bellow his name with massive force. Excitedly, Mu Yul urges him to look, calling it absolutely incredible. Stepping up, Mujin joins the demonstration, showing off the crane fist so Mu Yul can watch in awe as they perform the fluid forms right beside the crane, letting the boy study every single detail. Bayab Hyan whispers to ask if Mu Yul understands, but the boy remains crouched, silently observing the bird. Soon, Mu Yul's style proves to entirely different from Hai Gull's and Bayab Hyan's. Watching the bird's real movements, he adapts them to fit his own unique body, with natural flexibility and a rare connection with animals. He flows in sync with the crane. He seems to break past human limitations, finding true harmony with the wild. This movement captures the very essence of the crane. Stunned, Bayab Hyan watches on while Mujin and Hai Gull observe in silence, being brand new. His stance still lacks polish and intent, but with a master's touch it is easily corrected. Hai Gull gently adjusts an arm and leg. He explains that the best part of the 5 fists is how all forms connect freely, which will only help Mu Yul shape his own crane fist. He assures him that even if it diverges from traditional stances, this absolute freedom will never lead him astray. Watching this, Mujin wonders if his path is will to learn, and Myul eagerly confirms that he does. Then, Mujin ties his own clothes, drawing their attention. He addresses Baebian and Master Hyejial, announcing his work here is finished and that he will not return tomorrow. Smiling, Hyejial comments that it seems Mujin found what he wanted and is ready to return to his own master. Bowing deeply, Mujin thanks him for everything the master taught him before asking a favor. Instead, the master requests that Myul accompany Mujin, and the young boy readily agrees. As they walk, Baebian asks if it is too early to send him away, but Hyejial reassures him, explaining that the boy was never actually here to master the crane fist. Realizing the situation, Mujin understands that there was nothing more to train there since what he needed to learn was not the crane fist itself. He already had his own style as a novice, but a massive barrier arose when integrating new methods. Observing Hyejial and Myul adjusting the crane fist, he finally saw his path. If he started with the small deluge fist and mixed in diamond fist moves, he could easily increase his power while putting less strain on his body. It was exactly as his grandfather had hoped, wanting him to find his style He did not need to master the crane fist at all, just understand it. Learning those main movements was the key to unlocking a true hybrid style. Now he wonders if there are other beast styles like the dragon fist. But he quickly concludes that it is up to Miles' masters to figure that out. That is not his problem. Turning away, Hyejial announces he will withdraw and asks Baebian to dismiss Mile when he returns, but then a shocking realization hits. This entire sequence of events had actually been part of Grandmaster Hunqueng's design. Questioning himself, Hyejial wonders if the old master truly planned all of this. And if Mujin had already seen right through the lesson, it was deeply admirable. A full month into the physical therapy, Mujin notices a huge change. His grandfather no longer feels any pain with small, everyday movements. Though a full recovery is still far off with major obstacles ahead, it does not matter because there is absolutely no other choice left for them. Right now, he must take everything seriously, as this remains his only hope. Walking together, Abbot Hunchun and Master Hyedam wonder if Master Hunqueng will recover. At least he seems far more lively. Recalling the past, Hyedam recounts how the abbot threatened to punish Mujin if the treatment failed, apparently. That threat was just to ensure Mujin took the situation seriously. Then the abbot states that they must hurry up. Meanwhile, over in Hunqueng's quarters, Mujin is fully prepared to begin the day's physical therapy. Suddenly, the masters enter and ask what was so serious that he called for them. Turning to the abbot, Mujin asks for a moment, explaining he is almost done. Seeing this treatment in action, the abbot can only stare in absolute surprise. Grinning, Hunqueng asks if today is the day they work on his hips. Since they did his legs yesterday, Mujin confirms, rushing right in. Stepping closer, the abbot questions if Master Hyang Wang should really be moving like that. Responding calmly, Hyang Wang says his body feels much lighter now and that it was just a light stretch, leaving the abbot absolutely stunned. For Master Hyang Wang, that simple movement was actually a massive breakthrough. Before, he could barely breathe, let alone move without experiencing intense pain. Even when being carried, he suffered. Outside, Hayedam asks if it is working. Beside him, Hayankian admits he never imagined seeing their master walk again. The abbot recalls that Mujin originally promised a month would be enough. Seeing the results now, he confirms the treatment is definitely working. Honestly, Hayedam confesses he doubted these methods at first, but is thoroughly impressed. Seeing the incredible progress, Hyanshin shares their next course of action. He requested Mujin to meet them after today's session to discuss the next steps. Mujin is fully aware that the senior monks now place immense trust in him. Still, he wonders if their blind faith alone will carry them through. He knows the real, grueling trial begins right now, and he must succeed. His primary goal is to get his grandfather walking completely on his own. Up until now, he focused on physical therapy to build Hyang Wang's core. Gently supporting him, Mujin helped the old man stand up and practice walking. Just like a patient in a modern clinic, Hyang Wang was relearning the basics. His damaged joints and stiff tendons had slowly started to heal. However, decades had passed with his body remaining entirely passive and immobile. His muscles were severely atrophied, making strength training absolutely vital. Strengthening his muscles was the only way, so Mujin knocks to enter the room. Entering politely, Mujin says he needs to discuss his grandfather's treatment. One master asks if there is a problem, since Hyang Wang is already moving. Mujin explains that while things are going well, a major obstacle lies ahead. The monks look concerned and immediately ask him to explain the issue. He details that while the tendons are healing, the joint cartilage is severely deteriorated. Normally, building surrounding muscle solves this, but the old master is too weak. In his fragile condition, intense exercises would put heavy pressure on his joints. Doing so would only ruin his progress and worsen the damage. A master asks if he brings this up because a solution is already in mind. Another monk chimes in, praising his incredible achievements with the treatment so far. Expressing complete trust, they warmly encourage the young disciple to speak freely. They promise to listen with open minds, eager to hear any possible method. Taking a deep breath, Mujin prepares to reveal what his grandfather truly needs. He delivers the shocking verdict clearly: his grandfather must eat meat. A heavy, stunned silence fills the room as that forbidden word echoes loudly. In truth, eating meat for muscle growth is always a highly debated topic. While many plant-based experts argue a vegan diet works, reality is far different. As a top-tier modern trainer, Gang Yuk thoroughly researched this exact issue. Both sources have amino acids, but the body absorbs animal protein much better. Given Haiyang Wang's advanced age, his weak digestive system cannot handle large meals. He needs high-density protein immediately, but this is the holy temple of Shaolin. Eating meat here is an absolute, unforgivable sin, and someone immediately stands to protest. They shout, eating meat in Shaolin is absolute sacrilege. Holding his head, Mujin realizes the situation is somehow far worse than he ever imagined. The abbot approaches and asks why anyone needs meat to build muscle, since Mujin grew strong without it, recalling his past. Mujin remembers eating meat as a kid and explains his case is different. He explains that although simple beans and mushrooms can replace meat, they are still just temporary substitutes. He declares that unlike Bayop Gang and himself, his grandfather lacks the youth to easily recover. He asks if the strict ban on meat is really about overcoming desire, admitting that is how he managed to stop, but he emphasizes training only matters for those who can endure, not when Buddhist laws demand a sacrifice that leads to death. Thinking of his grandfather, he despairs. At the thought of losing him, he yells, "I will not let that happen." Again, does this not violate the absolute law against killing? One master starts to boil with absolute fury. Haiyang Gong angrily points at him, accusing him of dishonoring Master Hyun Kwang while daring to lecture them on law. Intervening, Abbot Hyun places a hand on his shoulder, urging him to calm down. Haiyang Gong tries to resist the grasp, but with that single touch, Abbot Hyun completely neutralizes his inner energy. The abbot then turns to face the other elders, noting that Mujin actually makes a very compelling point. He asks if consuming meat is truly the only path to recovery. He wonders why that must be the sole option. Hearing this, Mujin knows he cannot use modern fitness terms since they do not understand scientific protein and muscle recovery. Improvising, he begins to explain that reincarnation is not just about leaving this world behind. He argues that all creation exists in endless cycles, and feeding the human body requires some animal protein. Nature dictates that every living thing ends and is reborn, making meat and plants part of that natural order. He asks if eating what is already dead to survive is truly wrong. Even if slaughtering for pure pleasure is a sin, in the eyes of nature, humans are simply animals, which is why eating animal meat naturally allows our own flesh to heal and grow. Abbot Hyun silently absorbs the entire explanation before letting out a soft sigh. He admits his words have some merit, but the 1,000-year-old Shaolin laws cannot be broken without clear proof. As Mujin tries to protest, a quick hand gesture from the abbot stops him. He adds that they cannot simply ignore the master who dedicated his life to protecting the sect. Abbot Hyun recalls their past battles, then turns toward Haiyang Gong, demanding in the name of the Jade Buddha to review their sacred code. The sudden request shocks the other masters, but Abbot Hyun confirms his firm intent, proposing a major rule change. He suggests adding an exception that allows the sick to eat meat solely for medical treatment. This unprecedented suggestion leaves the assembly absolutely stunned. Quietly celebrating, Mujin realizes he can finally save his grandfather, declaring the final decision. Abbot Hyun states this will allow them to uphold Shaolin law. But the elders demand punishment for eating meat. Mujin steps forward, asking what the penalty is, offering to take it himself. Abbot Hyan Chun then informs him he must endure a month of wall-facing meditation, asking if he is ready to repeat it 4 consecutive times. Mujin quietly wonders what a single month of meditation actually involves, but he willingly accepts, declaring that the penalty is absolutely nothing. Around them, the other masters question Abbot Hyan Chun's decision, acknowledging that the situation is unexpected. The next day, in Hyan Kuang's quarters, the elder is informed of the council's decision. Then Hyan Kuang tells the abbot that for Shaolin's future, they must place their complete trust in Mujin. Reflecting, Abbot Hyan Chun admits that rigid traditions have bound Shaolin to ancient customs for 1,000 years. Looking back, he explains that he only became the abbot because of Hyan Kuang's injuries, admitting that due to his own failings, he merely clung to tradition. Abbot Hyan Chun takes the blame for letting Shaolin stray from its past glory. Responding, Hyan Kuang says that change is not always for the worse, and they both know that. Concluding, the abbot states that he chose Mujin for this very reason, hoping the boy would bring positive change. Confirming his decision, Hyan Kuang says he wishes to place his complete trust in Mujin once more. Abbot Hyan Chun then lets him enter. When Mujin brings in the meal, Hyan Kuang immediately understands. He looks down and recognizes it, actual meat sneaked into the temple. The old master stares at the meat porridge, something he has not tasted for decades. With no other choice, Hyan Kuang accepts, remembering the determination in Hyan Chun's eyes and the trials Mujin faced to convince the elders. He eats. And so, for the first time since taking his vows, the Grandmaster eats meat. The following week, Mujin teaches Baep Gang how to take over the ancestors' treatment. Once the master takes over, Hyan Kuang begins to consume small portions of meat. Between the physical therapy and the new diet, the elder is finally recovering, and just like that, Mujin's dreaded cave confinement begins. He trudges through the quiet forest, never imagining he would return to this place. But he knows he must do what needs to be done. As he approaches the dark cave, he remembers being dragged there as a young novice. He originally planned to just meditate a little, hunt wild animals, and eat meat to survive, but with Hyan Xiang unexpectedly joining, he invites him inside. Thinking back to the meeting, Mujin recalls when Abbot Hyan Chun mentioned the situation was highly unusual. Standing firm, Hyan Xiang declared he would accept the exact same punishment. Shocked, Mujin asked if he really planned to join him, and the monk confirmed it. Realizing what this means, Mujin understands how the ancient temple law was bypassed, putting him in a tricky spot. The moment they sit down, Hyan Xiang begins reciting Buddhist scriptures, and Mujin feels his body lock up. As the chanting continues, Mujin realizes that Hyan Xiang seems to be completely mixing up the sutras. In silence, Mujin simply sits and listens. Suddenly, he senses something is terribly wrong, because his companion should not be reciting these sutras. Remembering his studies, Mujin realizes that Hyan is scrambling the sacred chants on purpose. Random passages are chanted in a bizarre order. Meditating deeply, Mujin looks for a hidden pattern within the sequence. Suddenly, he realizes they all belong to core scrolls he studied, each linked to specific combat forms. Paying close attention to the chants, he links every single verse to a martial technique. With that, his visualization training officially begins. Inside his mind, he envisions the first form as a straight punch, and the sixth as a heavy kick, but something feels off. For 30 minutes, he keeps up the practice, linking sutras and deadly moves. Soon, restlessness creeps in, making him crave real movement. Mental practice is no longer enough, yet he knows he cannot move freely right before the abbot. Suddenly, Hyan shifts his chanting rhythm. This sudden change leaves Mujin completely baffled. He struggles to decipher if this is a test, wondering what Hyan wants, deciding To gamble, he slowly gets up to practice his movements, passing close. To Haiyan, Mujin notices the abbot is still meditating with absolutely no reaction. This confirms his suspicions, and he initiates his first move. Mujin unleashes a straight punch, the opening form of chain-linking fist. Next, he executes the 21st form of the diamond fist, finishing the combo with the autumn wind leg. Haiyan keeps the perfect beat, making it easy to synchronize his strikes, but then he notices that Haiyan repeats a verse. Mujin wonders if he made some mistake. Suddenly, Haiyan coughs. Mujin realizes that errors will be flagged by coughs and pitch changes, while a calmer tone means his forms are approved. This training forces him to combine the best moves from every single sutra, with his strikes guided entirely by the rhythm of the abbot's chants. This secret training continues deep into the night. At this point, Mujin starts to wonder about the true purpose of this training. Haiyan silently reflects that he has stolen too much of Mujin's time for his master's therapy, feeling guilty for delaying him. He refuses to waste another month, deciding to compensate for all the missed lessons. Soon, a monk arrives with daily water and meditation rations, asking them to eat. Moving inside, Haiyan and Mujin sit in the cave. Suddenly, Mujin realizes he was nearly caught, failing to sense the visitors' presence. He finally puts the pieces together, realizing the abbot's cough was a warning to hide his illicit training. Even so, he cannot sit still and decides to head outside. Watching him walk away, Haiyan concludes the cave is too small for proper training, but Mujin is actually searching for protein, hilariously asking a rabbit to find its parents. Meanwhile, Bopjin notices a remarkable change in the elderly master. Thanks to the meat diet and therapy, Haiyang Wang has visibly improved, his frail, withered body showing early signs of fresh muscle growth. He can even walk around now without Bibin's constant support. When another disciple arrives, Bopjin steps away to get lunch ready. Watching his disciple leave, Haiyang Wang remains silent. Looking back, Haiyan Quang realizes his own body's change was held back by his stubborn pride. He remembers how Abbot Haiyan Chun blamed himself for strictly following ancient traditions. Though he disagreed back then, he now fully understands why the abbot felt such heavy guilt, knowing he would have done the exact same thing in his position, admitting his own deep folly. He was just as foolish, recalling how he once said that true meaning is far more important than rules. Being paralyzed, he could not see what is now so clear. As he stands, he wonders why they became so obsessed with painful ascetic training just because of ancient Shaolin tradition. His mind drifts back to the dark day the demonic cult invaded, stripping away his master-level martial arts. While everyone else panicked, the young Haiyan Quang insisted he was fine. In reality, agonizing despair consumed his soul. At his peak, he believed he mastered the 5 natures, the scriptures, and martial arts. As his body weakened, he rejected those lessons because his internal chi center had been shattered. Now, everything changes again. Thanks to the sheer stubbornness of young Mujin, reflecting in silence, Haiyan Quang knows that even if Shaolin Temple is destroyed, its spirit remains locked in his heart. He sits in deep meditation under the pouring rain, chanting a sacred mantra of awakening. The master of the 5 natures finally joins the ranks of the truly enlightened. Reaching the ultimate state, he becomes entirely free. He marvels at the endless oceans of energy filling the world, and how limited a human body is to contain it. Walking through corridor, Haiyan Gong suddenly freezes, sensing a monstrous wave of energy. Running at lightning speed, he dashes across the courtyard. Recognizing Haiyan Quang's massive presence, he senses a completely new divine flow, staring up toward the cliff in disbelief. Meanwhile, Elder Haigal and the other senior monks arrive. Abbot Haiyan Chun looks up, deeming this miracle impossible. Staring in awe, Haiyan Gong watches his master's energy explode outward, wondering if he has achieved true nirvana. Up on the cliff, Haiyan Quang remains in deep meditation as a pillar of blinding light pierces the heavens. The rain suddenly stops, leaving the stunned monks wondering where this energy came from. Though they recognize its signature, even the weakest disciples can feel that this grand energy belongs to Grandmaster Haiyan Quang. Warm, comforting aura transcending anything they have ever felt envelops everyone. Pressing their hands together, they bow in deep reverence, understanding this miracle. They realize Haiyan Quang has achieved nirvana and begin chanting a mantra together. Shouting aloud, Haiyan Gong asks if his master has finally achieved enlightenment. Floating in the air, Haiyan Quang remains completely bathed in golden light. Responding gently, he says he is simply letting into his heart what he already knew in his mind. Surprised by this, Haiyan Gong asks why his master has not yet ascended into the state of Buddhahood. Explaining, Haiyan Quang says he still has unfinished business to settle, and that his grand ascension was only possible thanks to Mujin. Walking toward his disciples, he asks where Mujin is. A monk quickly replies that he has been meditating with the abbot for 18 days. Hyun Guang clarifies that this is not true, sparking an instant reaction. Dreading the tense situation, a messenger runs to the cave to find Hyun Gong. Arriving at the entrance, he quickly informs the abbot and Mujin that their confinement is over and they must return. Remembering the punishment, Hyun Gong notes there are still 10 days left. But the messenger insists he has strict orders to bring them back. The abbot wonders who could override a formal temple punishment. He reveals the order came from Grandmaster Haiyan Quang, leaving Mujin alarmed. Mujin wonders why the Grandmaster would suddenly halt his training. He fears something happened to his grandfather, while Hyun Gong asks what happened. The messenger reassures them, telling Hyun Gong there is no need to shout. The Grandmaster explained he heard this food was highly beneficial for the body. He says the temple rules have changed, encouraging the abbot to try some. But Hyun Gong wonders if someone who achieved nirvana still needs to eat. As they walk down the hallway, Grandmaster Haiyan Quang asks a simple question. He asks if there is truly any issue with the food he eats. He even wonders if Hyun Gong sent Mujin to the cave just to protect him. A disciple announces their arrival, and Grandmaster Haiyan Quang warmly invites them in. Mujin whispers to the abbot that he was expecting some terrible news. But seeing this peaceful moment, it seems his worries were completely unnecessary. The young man steps inside, while the abbot wonders what is going on. Stepping closer, both Mujin and the abbot catch a strange scent. Inside, Grandmaster Haiyan Quang is sitting before a massive feast of meat. He jokes with Hyun Gong about enjoying life before reaching enlightenment. Knowing he cannot win this argument, Hyun Gong surrenders and shuts his mouth. The Grandmaster thanks him for understanding, then immediately calls Mujin over. Mujin stands at the door, completely frozen by the scene before him. Totally bewildered, he asks himself what on earth is happening. Grandmaster Haiyan Quang smiles, stating he is simply taking care of his body. Mujin turns to Hyun Gong for answers, but the master stays quiet. Hyun Gong swears he did not eat a single bite of the meat. Flexing his arm, the Grandmaster credits the meat for restoring his strength. He firmly adds that they had to release Mujin from the cave. He declares that someone who did nothing but help others is not guilty. Dismissing him, the Grandmaster tells Mujin to train and asks the abbot to stay. The young man gladly leaves Hyun Gong behind in the room. Thinking about the bizarre reunion, Mujin cannot help but complain. The Grandmaster nearly reached enlightenment, yet he chose meat over everything. Still, there is good news, as the training gear he requested has finally arrived. Bayob Gun grins, noting that Mujin can now train as much as he likes. Walking inside, Mujin finds a room packed with monks enthusiastically lifting weights. Bayob Gun confesses they have no idea how to use the gear. He begs Mujin to teach the other disciples how to train properly. Looking around, Mujin admits this place cannot match his old modern gym. Yet the familiar smell of sweat and heavy iron makes him feel right at home. Nearby, two curious monks stare at a strange machine, wondering how to lift. They debated how to use it, deciding to wait. Upon arriving, Mujin immediately questioned Mugong. He asked Muil where Mujiang was, and Mugong guessed he was probably somewhere else. Other monks walked over, eagerly asking if the prisoner had escaped from jail. A monk questioned him, pointing at some gear, so Mujin placed a hand on his head, declaring it was real training gear before quickly catching himself. He explained it was just a rubber wheel and turned to ask the others. He asked if they wanted to learn to use the gear or if they were just going to stand and watch. Grabbing the wheel, he noted that the spokes were made of wood and iron coated in melted natural rubber, turning the heavy tire, he explained. The grueling exercise had to be repeated across the entire training ground. He warned them that this heavy tire weighed around 250 goon, and the full body workout would teach them how to distribute their strength. Mujin challenged Mugong to try it first, and the young monk accepted. As Mugong prepared to lift the tire, Mujin warned him that inner energy would count as cheating. Right then, Muil approached and mentioned that he